Chapter 1828. Wei Si prided himself on being a man. How could he let a 2-year-old baby protect him? Ridiculous. What can you protect me with? Wei Si carried the cowardly and adorable Erlang from the Feng family. Hearing his gentle tone, it actually made the latter's hair stand on end. His pair of big eyes were instantly filled with hazy water vapor. His small mouth pouted and rolling tears fell down his face. Wei Si was speechless. He hadn't done anything yet. Why was this kid crying first? Wei Si couldn't help but put down Erlang of the Feng family. The kid cried and crawled quickly towards the second prince, hugging him and crying silently. The second prince raised his hand and patted his back, coaxing him in a low voice. Wei Si felt his teeth ache. He was indeed a hateful kid. In the previous life, Feng Yu had many tricks up his sleeve, but at least he was thick-skinned and knew his limits when it came to playing tricks. Now this fake was completely shameless. Even if he was wearing the skin of a 2-year-old, who knew how old an old ghost was inside? Did an old ghost have the nerve to cry while asking for comfort from a 1-year-old baby? The answer was yes. Erlang of the Feng family seemed to be addicted to playing the role of a child, asking for comfort, hugs and kisses at every turn. This is a black-hearted one. Wei Si concluded after watching for a while. Acting cute maliciously was too much. However, the second prince was a cute complex. He couldn't control himself when it came to cute things. He could even change his lazy work and rest habits in order to come into contact with cute things. Wei Si looked at the shameless Erlang of the Feng family. An idea flashed in his mind and he couldn't help but sneer. Acting cute, right? No matter how cute he acted, he was still an old cucumber dipped in green paint. The surface was tender, but the inside was dry and devoid of water. How could he be more attractive than being naturally cute? On the second day of class, Wei Si had something in his sleeve that immediately attracted the second prince's attention. Erlang of the Feng family was tragically abandoned. Bye-bye. The first prince also pointed at the black and white ball in surprise. This is black. Wei Si's eldest daughter, Nan, appeared. Not only could she cry, but she could also look at people with her dark, pure and innocent eyes, melting people. The first prince showed an unprecedented curiosity towards new things. The eyes of the usually lazy second prince also lit up. He took the initiative to get up from the mat and moved to the front of Wei Si step by step. His eyes stared unblinkingly at the little darling in his arms. Sir, the second prince blinked his bright eyes and said happily, I want to play with it. The female official looked worriedly at the black and white ball in Wei Si's hand. Even if it was just a cub, it was still an iron-eating beast that had followed Qiyu through many battles. They were worried that it would hurt his highness. Wei Si generously placed Darling in her arms. Before coming over, this black and white ball had already been carefully washed. At this moment, its hair was shining. Sir, I'm afraid his highness won't be able to hold him, the maid watched nervously. Before she could finish her words, she saw the second prince holding the iron-eating beast cub, which was not much shorter than her. The iron-eating beast cub did not let Wei Si down. It shyly covered its eyes with its paws and opened its mouth slightly, revealing its pink tongue. The eldest prince also came forward and carefully stroked the black and white ball's fur. The black and white ball had maintained its cub form for so many years. Its fur was not as rough as that of an adult, but very soft instead. Yuan looks good. The iron-eating beast cub was indeed round, so the eldest prince called it Yuan. The cub was also very happy and responded with a whimper. Wei Si smiled and stroked the two princes' hair bun. He gently advised, it's time for class. After class the two princes can play with it. The eldest prince thought it was good, but the second prince insisted on holding the cub to class. Darling was good-natured and let her pinch and rub it. Erlang of the Feng family, who had fallen out of favor, was speechless. Wei Si smiled but did not say anything. Could Erlang of the Feng family be as cute as his daughter? No. In his lord's words, his daughter's cub was super invincible and cute. A human cub still wanted to compete with the national treasure in terms of cuteness. She really had no idea. Erlang of the Feng family would cry and whimper, but could his whimpers be as cute as Darling's daughter? Today's class was exceptionally comfortable. The two princes still had a longing expression on their faces after class. Sir, the second prince hugged Darling tightly and gave Wei Si a cute look with her eyes, trying to soften Wei Si's heart and let Darling stay with her. However, Wei Si was still rational and rejected her proposal. It was true that Darling was very obedient and did not hurt people, but she was indeed not suitable to be with the two princes for a long time, especially when Wei Si was not around. She could not play alone. He was not afraid of anything else. He was only afraid that the two princes and Darling would be used and cause irreparable regret. Therefore the stone-hearted Wei Si hardened his heart and put Darling into his arms. Then he took Erlang of the Feng family away by the collar. On the way, Erlang of the Feng family's expression was solemn, while Wei Si's expression was joyful. "You are so childish." Sitting in the carriage, the 2-year-old Erlang of the Feng family criticized Wei Si with a straight face. He looked fiercely at the panda in Wei Si's arms. This human's operation was also very coquettish. He actually wanted to use the panda cub to divide his affection. How childish. Wei Si was resting with his eyes closed. When he heard Erlang of the Feng family's childish criticism, he sneered. "The old man inside has the cheek to criticize me for being childish?" Erlang of the Feng family was not childish when he put on a child's skin and acted cute and spoiled to his second prince? But you are even more childish. Erlang of the Feng family and Wei Si were considered familiar, but it was one-sided. When he was still living in Jiang Pingji's god-slaying sword, he was forced to watch Wei Si and Jiang Pingji being intimate every day. The two also did things that were not suitable for children in front of him. Although he did not see it, he heard it. Whether Wei Si was childish or not, he knew. Wei Si sneered. "If you tell me the details, I won't be childish with you. Otherwise, the panda Darling would occupy the second prince's embrace for a long time and would not have the status of his old love, Erlang of the Feng family." Erlang of the Feng family could not help but roll his eyes. He had seen people who liked to court death, but he had never seen someone who was in a hurry to court death. "What's the hurry?" Erlang of the Feng family revealed a meaningful smile. "When it happens, won't you know?" When they were about to reach the mansion, Wei Si asked him, "Your Majesty, can you really handle it?" Erlang of the Feng family said, "As long as you don't die, she won't lose. You are very important to her." Wei Si revealed a puzzled expression. Erlang of the Feng family said, "That's why I have to protect you. Now, this identity is just right to deceive people and not arouse suspicion." Wei Si was speechless. "Not necessarily." When they got off the car, Wei Si also grabbed Erlang's collar. As Wei Si entered the mansion, he could faintly hear him say, "Protect? With a body that can be lifted up with one hand?" Erlang of the Feng family was speechless. "Are you looking down on our milk baby's core? I'll show you my true identity and scare you to death." Erlang of the Feng family spat out a mouthful of milk paste angrily. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 1829. Just as Erlang of the Feng family was trying his best to compete with Panda Darling for favor, the situation in Beiyuan became clearer. Feng Zhen persuaded the general of Beiyuan with his verbal rap. The two forces were at loggerheads on the surface, but in fact they were in cahoots. After a period of brewing, the public opinion that had been put into place had indeed reached the maximum limit of eruption. Under Feng Zhen's instructions, the general of Beiyuan sent his confidants to pretend to be ordinary people to spread the news and further promote public opinion. Public opinion spread from the military to the people, and from the people to the military, causing chaos in both circles. The general of Beiyuan watched everything uneasily, but at the same time he felt a hidden ambition. Everything went exactly as Messenger Feng Zhen had said, without a single mistake. But he was still worried that a long delay would bring trouble. From time to time he would ask Feng Zhen when to take action. Feng Zhen's patient guidance finally put the general's heart at ease. One day the general who usually didn't get along with him suddenly came to drink with him. His words sounded like he was testing him. The general suddenly remembered Messenger Feng Zhen's guidance, and his dizzy mind cleared up a little. He followed Feng Zhen's instructions step by step to get information from the general. Sure enough, he got the truth out of him. The general said, "I'm not satisfied with your words, but I know what you've done these days. You've also seen the situation today. The Yi family is cruel and tyrannical. It doesn't matter what we do, but we can't watch the people become like this." The general sneered in his heart. The general's political stance was not on the same page as his. He usually liked to play up to the rich and bully the people. Such a terrible person actually dared to use the banner of, "for the good of the people." He was really shameless. "Oh, what will you do?" The general said in a low voice. "General, have you contacted the other side?" The general knew which side the other side was. The general would find clues, and the general had deliberately leaked the news. However, the general still had to pretend to be deaf and dumb to test if the general was serious about rebelling. The general laughed. "General, don't be afraid. I feel the same as you. I can't stand the Yi family's cruelty and want to plead for the people of Beiyuan to welcome the true emperor. However, General, you're still too careful. You can't control the entire border by yourself. The defending general sneered. What do you intend to do? The deputy general said, this general is willing to be the general's vanguard and fulfill your long-cherished wish. Discerning people all knew that Baiyuan couldn't hold on any longer. Who knew the situation of military provisions and supplies better than the soldiers? Baiyuan could not resist the enemy's 250,000 iron hooves. Many speculators had already started looking for their next target, and Jiang Pingji was undoubtedly their only target. Unfortunately, they wanted to seek refuge but had no way to do so. They scratched their ears and cheeks, and the deputy general was one of them. Just as he was worrying about this, he realized that his superior, the garrison general, had some unusual movements. It seemed to have something to do with Jiang Pingji. That was why he took the initiative to look for him, hoping to get in touch with him and get some credit for helping him become a dragon. Baiyuan would be lost sooner or later. Those who pledged their allegiance to Jiang Pingji first would naturally be more important. When Jiang Pingji used force to break through the gates of the Baiyuan kingdom, the captives would be prisoners. It was better to plan a way out for himself so that he could be a high-ranking official when he was with Jiang Pingji. At the very least, they would be able to maintain their current status. The garrison general then asked him, "What proof do you have?" The deputy general leaned close to the garrison general's ear and whispered a few words. After the two looked at each other, they revealed a tacit smile. The deputy general's pledge of allegiance was a signal. More and more people took the opportunity to change sides. The garrison general saw that the time was ripe. Under Feng Zhen's instructions, he held a banquet and invited all the important generals to drink and discuss important matters. After 3 rounds of drinking, the garrison general scolded the Yi family for being cruel and tyrannical. The generals kept quiet out of fear. "Everyone, why don't you follow me and rebel against the Yi family?" He pulled out his sword and looked at the crowd with bloodshot eyes. Those who had colluded with him all agreed. A few generals from the Yi family's faction were enraged. They pulled out their swords and scolded the garrison general for his treason. In the end, before they could finish their words, their heads were chopped off by the people beside them. The banquet that had been filled with toasts 15 minutes ago was now covered in blood. A few heads rolled on the ground. The garrison general sent someone to collect the heads as a gift for the opening of the city the next day. A mutiny was carried out quietly. When many low-ranking soldiers woke up, the flags on the city walls were uniformly changed. The flags fluttered in the wind and snow. The unfamiliar patterns of the tribe's emblems stood tall on the land of the Baiyuan. Not long after, the news of the loss of the border flew to the Baiyuan as if it had wings. Jiang Pingji took advantage of the high morale on her side and sent troops to attack 3 passes in a row. The morale of the people in the Baiyuan was completely destroyed. At this time, the public opinion among the people had reached a boiling point. More and more people knew that the outside world could no longer tolerate the atrocities of the Yi family in the Baiyuan. At this time, the news of Jiang Pingji's strict management of the army. After the city was breached, the news of not burning, looting, disturbing the people, and not slaughtering captives also spread. More and more people gathered and wanted the garrison soldiers to open the city gates and surrender to Jiang Pingji. Lord Jiang didn't come to attack the Baiyuan. She came to eradicate the malignant tumor of the Yi family and save our people. The harsh governance of the Baiyuan was a sharp contrast to the benevolent governance Jiang Pingji implemented in Dongqing. The people's nerves had long been suppressed to the bottom. At this time, when Jiang Pingji attacked the Baiyuan, they all rebounded. Most of the garrison soldiers were old, weak, sick, and disabled. How could they resist the people who had lost control of their emotions? After Jiang Pingji attacked 3 passes in a row, there were people who opened the gates and surrendered at every place. Occasionally there was resistance, but it was like cutting tofu with a knife. The 250,000 troops rushed all the way to the capital of the Baiyuan. Under the seemingly harmonious situation, there was a surge of disharmony. Jiang Pingji couldn't let the aristocrats of the Baiyuan go. She sent people to mix among the people and stir up their resentment. She instigated them to attack the houses of the aristocrats and loot. The soldiers who were mixed in took the opportunity to harvest all the heads. When Jiang Pingji received the message for help and hurriedly sent troops to rescue them, the rebels had long dispersed. The unlucky ones were completely annihilated. The lucky ones still had a few people left. Our Lord's methods are really becoming more and more like an emperor. In half a month, they conquered half of the Baiyuan and killed tens of thousands of enemies. 60% of them were the so-called aristocrats of the Baiyuan. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Feng Zhen really couldn't imagine that the 2 words, aristocrats, were so cheap. Every household had a scale of hundreds or thousands of people. Were the people of the Beiyuan all breeding pigs? How could they have so many children? What made him even more emotional was the Lord. She didn't have the slightest bit of soft-heartedness. She directly killed them. In the end, she even put all the blame on the refugees. No one had any evidence to suspect her. Who asked them to bully the people so ruthlessly? It was reasonable for the people to aim their angry butcher's knife at them. Qiguan Rang said indifferently, "She is an emperor. One and only. Genius in a second. Remember this site's address." Mobile version. Chapter 1830. Even when the city was under siege, there were still people wandering in a drunken stupor. Urgent reports of defeat were sent to the capital city and into the ears of those in power. Some people were worried about their future, while others were enjoying the time they had left and squandered their remaining time. The Emperor of Beiyuan was undoubtedly the former. He was worried about the future of Beiyuan, but he was more worried about the fate of the Yi family. In order to save the situation, he had tried his best, but in the end he was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. "Get out, all of you!" The huge pressure made him lose control of his emotions. The palace maids and imperial concubines screamed in fear, which made him even more annoyed. He pulled out his sword and stabbed it into the chest of his beloved concubine, who was closest to him. He watched her slowly fall to the ground with her hand over her heart, and the mat under her was covered with blood. Only then did he regain some calmness. This was not the first time such a situation had happened. As the war became more serious, the enemy marched straight in and conquered one city after another of the North Abyss. This ambitious Emperor Yi went crazy, and his temperament became even more ruthless and cruel than before. The imperial concubines did not dare to come close to him at this time. Who knew when he would go crazy and stab himself to death? Now this beloved concubine was also unscrupulous in order to climb up. Unfortunately, the emperor was in a bad mood, so he killed her to vent his anger. "Get out, all of you!" The emperor killed another 2 palace maids with his sword, and then he completely calmed down. Because of the emperor's antics, the originally warm palace gave people a bone-piercing chill. At this time, the eunuch serving the emperor came forward to deliver something. The emperor saw it and hurriedly asked him to serve it. It was called immortal powder. It was rare and precious. After taking it, one would feel refreshed and revitalized. It could also stimulate inspiration and relieve stress. Recently, the emperor had a headache because of Jiang Pingji's attack on Beiyuan, so he became more and more dependent on the immortal powder. After taking the immortal powder, the irritable emperor was like a placated tiger. He lazily lay on the dragon throne, looking dreamy and comfortable. The palace maids and eunuchs were secretly relieved to see that. The emperor could calm down for a few hours after taking the immortal powder. During these hours, there was no need to worry that he would go crazy and kill people. Of course, that was not enough. After a quarter of an hour, the emperor's face was flushed, and his breath was hot. He uncomfortably pulled his collar, and the thing 3 inches below his navel stood up energetically. "Come." The eunuch, who was in charge of the attendants, looked around and fixed his eyes on a beautiful palace maid. He casually pointed and signaled for her to come forward and serve. The immortal powder had been popular in Beiyuan for a long time, and it was a must-have for many men. As mentioned before, Beiyuan aristocratic families were crazy about reproduction. Not to mention pampering their wives and concubines every day, they wished they could pamper 7 or 8 wives and concubines in one night and impregnate them. However, if they did too many of these things, they would not be able to do it. Faced with the predicament of kidney deficiency, they began to take the immortal powder, in order to regain their masculinity. Just by sticking to it, a man's self-esteem would be restored. Not only would he feel refreshed and quick-witted, but he would also be able to stand firm in bed. Emperor Yi had been using the immortal powder for a few years now and was increasingly reliant on it. After taking the immortal immed of and of emperor, or of people, of and of the emperor of Cheng of palace. Sometimes he would hold a banquet to reward his officials, and he would allow them to enjoy his unconceived concubines. Of course, the Yi family had done a lot of ridiculous things during his reign. The palace maid named by the eunuch was only 13 or 14 years old, but she did not dare to resist. She could only step forward timidly. After a while, screams of pain spread throughout the palace. The eunuch who made the arrangements was still indifferent, but he murmured, "Poor thing. What a sin." It was not only the Yi family's sin but also their minions. In such a chaotic environment, Those who still had conscience could only choose to go along with the evil to protect themselves. Those who refused to obey had died a long time ago. An hour later, the dying palace maid was put in a sack and carried out of the palace. The eunuch who served the emperor entered. "What time is it now?" The emperor looked lazy, and there was an inexplicable decadence between his eyebrows. The eunuch answered obediently. The emperor snorted and put on his clothes with the help of the eunuch. "Go, summon the ministers and discuss how to fight against the enemy." The emperor yawned. The growing drowsiness made him very uncomfortable, but he still had to pull himself together to deal with political affairs. In fact, there was no good solution even after the discussion. The treasury of Baiyuan was empty, and the armaments were shabby. There was no decent army to stop the enemy's advance. The emperor said discontentedly, "So what if the treasury is empty when the country's survival is at stake?" The ministers couldn't help but grumble. Even a fool wouldn't ask this question. If the treasury was empty and there was no money to equip the army, who would go to war and die? There were too many ministers in the Baiyuan imperial court. They usually shared the benefits, but when it was really necessary for them to give advice, they all dropped the ball. The emperor's meaning was clear. If the treasury was empty, let the ministers take out their wealth to form an army to fight against the enemy. Seeing that the ministers pretended not to know, the emperor's anger rose again. "All of you are the ministers who receive the salary of Baiyuan. Now that the country is in danger, there is nothing you can do?" Since the hint didn't work, he would just say it directly. The emperor reprimanded the ministers angrily, trying to make them take out their wealth to fill the gap. How could the ministers agree to that? Jiang Pingji had almost conquered half of Baiyuan in such a short time. Could they still fight back in a desperate situation? The destruction of Baiyuan was a foregone conclusion. Even if they took out their wealth, it would be like throwing meat buns at a dog. Only fools would bet their wealth on the broken ship of Baiyuan. It wouldn't be as simple as being trapped. Maybe even the lives of the whole clan would be sacrificed. No matter what the emperor said, the ministers were playing Tai Chi and feigning civility. In the end, the furious emperor drew his sword and killed a few ministers who were not pleasing to the eye. Under the threat of their lives, a few ministers finally relented and said they would go back to raise money and grain. As soon as they left the palace, their expressions changed. Emperor was completely crazy. There was no future for him to continue to follow such a tyrant. It was better to follow Jiang Pingji. If they followed Jiang Pingji, even if they couldn't maintain their current status, they had a strong foundation and wouldn't have to worry about wealth and glory for the rest of their lives. These aristocratic families were blood-sucking worms that sucked the blood of Baiyuan dry. How could they not have a strong foundation? It was too rich. When Jiang Pingji heard that the emperor had secretly sent people to confiscate the property they had collected, even she, who was experienced and knowledgeable, was a little surprised. A small aristocratic family actually had all kinds of items that only the emperor could use. There was even more gold and silver. I thought Zhongzhao was the rich ones. I didn't expect the real rich ones to be these rubbish chickens. Jiang Pingji sneered and threw the account book aside. The idea of killing the rich ones to enrich the private treasury became stronger. The account book made her even more determined to wipe out the aristocratic families of Baiyuan. However, the aristocratic families of Baiyuan always had a lower limit. Jiang Pingji could broaden her horizons every time. Genius remembered the address of this website in a second. Mobile version. Chapter 1831. Even animals know that I am alive, and those who gave birth to me will not be humiliated. These people sure know how to play. Feng Zhen listened to his subordinate's report and couldn't help but reveal an expression that said, "I've learned something new." Qiguan Rang sneered and said, "When there are so many people, all kinds of monsters will come out." The father humiliated the daughter had an affair with her own uncle, the brother and sister were indescribable. As long as it was a man and a woman, they would be able to form a pair. How were they humans? They were clearly a group of beasts in human skin. Jiang Pingji said, "Get someone to pack these things up and throw them to Zixiao in the future." Qiguan Rang and Feng Zhen were stunned for a moment. These things that even they felt were dirty to their eyes, were thrown to Wei Ci? Could it be that the Lord also wanted to play the forbidden role with Zixiao? Jiang Pingji snorted. "What are you all thinking about? I said I'd throw them to Zixiao because I wanted to give them to his subordinates so they could have more material to write about. If they dare to do it, I dare to brand their names in the annals of unofficial history for the rest of their lives. This can also be considered as immortalized and recorded in the annals of history." Humph, very interesting. Qiguan Rang and Feng Zhen were speechless. His lord really knew how to play. If she really did that, those aristocrats wouldn't be able to live in peace even if they went to the underworld. The messy affairs of the family had been used as material to be written in erotic books for future generations to learn and enlighten them. If their ancestors in heaven knew that their family's reputation had been ruined by their descendants, wouldn't they be so angry that they would come back to life? He would most likely be angered to death. After another 2 days, Feng Zhen mysteriously asked Jiang Pingji to take a look at something. What are you looking at? Jiang Pingji had been very busy recently. It was not difficult to conquer Beiyuan. The difficult part was how to appease the people of Beiyuan and win their hearts. To put it bluntly, the food supply was not in place. She also made a note of the vacancies so that it would be easier for manpower to fill them. At a time like this, Feng Zhen didn't share her burdens and worries. He even said he wanted to take her to see something. Jiang Pingji frowned. Although that was what he said, his actions were still very honest. Feng Zhen had people carry over 3 large chests. When they opened them, they found that they were filled with dazzling gold, silver, and jewelry. Did you plunder someone else? Feng Zhen smiled and said, that's not true. Someone secretly delivered it to us yesterday. There's also a letter here. Jiang Pingji took it and read it carefully. She couldn't help but feel angry after reading a few lines. The people of Beiyuan, the battle in Beiyuan was too painful. All kinds of experiences made her realize that this country was rotten to the core. However, they were still able to lower their limits, which was an eye-opener for her. What does my lord think? Feng Zhen picked up a rather hefty piece of gold. A gold biscuit was worth 7 or 8 taels. Even though the purity of the gold refined in this era was not high, it was still enough to make one's jaw drop. Who knew how many gold coins there were in these 3 chests? The gold biscuits were the cheapest and there were 6 or 7 luminous pearls. Feng Zhen was tempted by the paintings and books of famous artists from different dynasties. However, he couldn't keep these things to himself. He didn't want his lord to settle scores with him in the future. Jiang Pingji sneered, what else can I do? Our army is strong and powerful. Even if we don't cooperate with them, we can still conquer the entire Beiyuan. They thought too highly of themselves. In fact, what the hell was all this? Did they really think that the Emperor of Beiyuan and I were the same kind of people and could be played like puppets? Didn't they think about their own situation? Did they think they had the right to bargain with me? Feng Zhen felt that what his lord said made sense. When he received the bribes and secret letters, he also thought that those people were crazy. They couldn't see themselves clearly at all. They actually talked terms with Jiang Pingji and hinted that she would give them high positions and generous salaries. It was already kind enough to give them a mat to bury their bodies after they died. Apart from you, who else received bribes? Feng Zhen laughed. I'm not sure about that. Jiang Pingji rubbed her brows and waved her hand. Keep these paintings and antiques if you like them. Don't touch the rest. Feng Zhen's eyes brightened. He bowed in thanks. What was the value of gold and silver? These paintings and antiques were priceless. Feng Zhen even saw the paintings of a senior idol in them. Not long after, Qiguan Rang also sent a few chests to Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji also asked Qiguan Rang to keep the paintings and antiques. The gold, silver, and jewelry inside were confiscated. Apart from them, a few others also received bribes of varying amounts. A few of them reported it to Jiang Pingji honestly, a few of them kept it a secret, and some of them did not even report it to the higher-ups. They all thought that Jiang Pingji didn't know. Little did they know that Jiang Pingji only looked at their behavior coldly. Only Qiguan Rang and a few others knew that the few who secretly bribed would stop there for the rest of their lives. They had to be careful not to make mistakes for the rest of their lives. Otherwise, what awaited them was their lord's revenge. When it came to holding grudges, Qiguan Rang, Yang Si, and Feng Zhen combined couldn't compare to Jiang Pingji. They never expected that Jiang Pingji would also receive bribes. Jiang Pingji looked at the emissary coldly. What do you mean? She racked her brains to think that Beiyuan would use such a trick. Were they preparing to kill her with such a trick? She had actually offered 32 handsome men in an orderly manner. The older ones were already in their 20s. The younger ones were only 12 or 13. The only thing they had in common was that they were good-looking. Very good-looking. Jiang Pingji didn't need to look at them carefully to know that they were good-looking. Didn't they see that the bullet screen in the livestream room was boiling? These salted fishes were experienced and knowledgeable. To be able to make them boil, one could see how good-looking these men were. Tiske, Jiang Pingji sneered coldly in her heart. Looking at Duo Zixiao's peerless beauty, these salted fishes could actually accept these pretentious, vulgar men. Their aesthetic standards needed to be improved. Faced with Jiang Pingji's mockery, one of the salted fishes spoke the truth. Potato chips. No matter how good Zixiao is, he's already taken. Moreover, these men are young and handsome. Jiang Pingji, very good, she would never eat potato chips again in her life. You don't have to explain. Jiang Pingji rubbed her brows and said, bring all of them back. If you insist on staying, that's fine. Before the emissary could reveal a joyful expression, Jiang Pingji said again, leave one, I'll kill one myself. The royal family of Beiyuan is immoral, but I'm enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. Let's fight, there's no room for nonsense. If your country's emperor still has a sense of shame, please tell him. First cultivate his virtue, then cultivate his heart. You've lost the hearts of the people, yet you don't repent and reflect on yourself. Instead, you use such a disgusting method to disgust people. It's really an eye-opener for me. The Xichang emperor only sent a pair of children, but the royal family of Beiyuan was arrogant. They sent 32 men in one go. 32 good men who don't want to join the army and serve the country, but come to me to flatter and wag their tails. Humph. Jiang Pingji's words were not polite at all. Feng Zhen and the others who were listening couldn't help but laugh. If they were the emissary and were humiliated like this, they would have pulled out their swords and committed suicide long ago. Chapter 1832. Being weak and barren is the original sin. Qiguan Rang watched coldly as the messenger was reprimanded by his lord and ridiculed by his colleagues. This messenger was obviously extremely sad and ashamed, but he could only show a flattering smile. The messenger was not a fool. How could he not know what kind of humiliation he would suffer by coming here? He knew what kind of situation it was, but he still came and had to come. The reason was that Beiyuan was too weak, so he had to come. Because it was weak, the messengers sent here had no dignity and could only be humiliated by others. Feng Zhen said, being weak and barren is a sin, but we did not bring this sin to them. Serves you right for asking for it. As one of the 5 countries in the world, if Beiyuan managed it well, it might be able to dominate the north and observe the world. Who asked Beiyuan to take the wrong path from the beginning? No, it should be said that their rulers could not restrain their greed and played a good hand to pieces. If any of them had restrained themselves and prioritized the country instead of putting selfishness first, Beiyuan would not have ended up like this. However, it was easy for him to say these words now. Were all the people in Beiyuan blinded by greed? At the end of the day, it was just bad money driving out good money. Those who still had a conscience could only choose to follow in the mire to protect themselves. The more people who followed in the mire, the larger the group, the faster the foundation of Beiyuan would be corroded. Even if some people knew that Beiyuan would be digging its own grave if it went on like this, who dared to stand up and say it? Those who dared to say it were either mute or dead. Everything that happened to Beiyuan, wasn't it also what Dongqing, Nanxing and Zhongzhou had experienced? However, the last 3 countries were completely free because someone used violence to cut off the rotten roots from the main trunk, but Beiyuan was still sinking. Qiguan Rang did not sympathize with the messengers of Beiyuan who were ridiculed and embarrassed by the crowd at all. Instead, he felt that this was the retribution they deserved. According to the Lord's previous words, during an avalanche, no snow was innocent. Similarly, when the Beiyuan collapsed, none of these officials were innocent. Was there any difference between choosing silence and following in the mire? In essence, there was no difference. They were all executioners who pushed Beiyuan to the end. This envoy was also an official of the Beiyuan court. Now that he was groveling at the feet of the Lord in such a lowly manner, wasn't he deserved it? When the crowd dispersed, the emissary led the 32 handsome men away in embarrassment. Qiguan Rang saw that the emissary's expression was sad and indignant but helpless. There seemed to be tears at the corner of his eyes. Seeing this, Qiguan Rang sneered and waved the feather fan in his hand even more cheerfully. He liked to see his enemies struggling in desperation. It made him happy. Just as he was thinking, he heard the crunching sound of snow being stepped on. Qiguan Rang didn't need to turn around to know who the footsteps belonged to. He turned around and bowed to Jiang Pingji. What is Wen Zheng looking at? Jiang Pingji followed Qiguan Rang's line of sight and looked over. She could faintly see a small messenger. Qiguan Rang remarked, "A few pitiful stray dogs." Jiang Pingji looked at him and corrected Qiguan Rang seriously. "It can't be a stray dog, right? It's obvious that they're the dogs of a defeated country." Qiguan Rang smiled delightfully. Jiang Pingji said, "Wenjing, do you think I'm a vile person who is intoxicated by success?" Qiguan Rang replied, "My lord is a woman, not a vile person. My lord is the victor, and the victor has the right to write history. It's not an exaggeration to say that you are successful. The country is about to perish. People in troubled times are worse than dogs. Which of the 4 words, stray dogs of a country, is wrong? When I heard the conversation between you and Zishur just now, I thought you were feeling sorry for the messenger who was humiliated and ridiculed and felt sad. That's why I came here to enlighten you. Jiang Pingji smiled as if she was telling the truth. I don't know enough about Wenjing. Wenjing's breadth of mind is different from ordinary people. It's also my fault for judging Wenjing from the perspective of an ordinary man. Qiguan Rang laughed. No one understands me as well as my lord. Jiang Pingji suddenly changed the topic. Looking at the situation, Beiyuan will be in our hands before the beginning of spring. Qiguan Rang nodded in agreement and tacitly ignored the previous topic with Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji said, Wenjing is not only an important minister to me but also a close friend. When Qiguan Rang heard this, he vaguely felt that something was wrong. Jiang Pingji continued, between close friends, we naturally hope that each other can be safe and live a better life. It's the same for me. Qiguan Rang asked her, what do you want to say, my lord? Jiang Pingji said, if one day you find something wrong with me, don't make a sound. Take care of yourself. She raised her hand and patted Qiguan Rang's shoulder, revealing her usual smile as if she was saying that the weather was good today. Qiguan Rang was shocked. He wanted to say something but stopped. Just remember it in your heart. Jiang Pingji interrupted what he wanted to say. I know that Wenjing hates the people of Beiyuan. They choose to be in cahoots with others or remain silent in the face of the country's crisis. Therefore, when the evil power reacts on themselves, they should bear it. However, there are different views from different perspectives. If silence can protect the safety of themselves and their families, many people will still choose to be silent. Was the country important? It was far more important than life, but relatives and family were also very important. Some people sacrificed their lives for the country, while others struggled at death's door for their families and chose to be in cahoots with others. Jiang Pingji used to think that black was black and white was white, but when she really faced such a situation, she realized that she was just an ordinary person. If something happened to her, she hoped that Qiguan Rang and the others would put their own safety first. Silence was also a means of self-protection. For the first time, Qiguan Rang lost control and grabbed Jiang Pingji's hand. He used so much strength that he completely forgot the difference between a ruler and a minister. My lord, what do you mean by this? Jiang Pingji smiled and said, make arrangements in advance. Maybe it will be useful. Qiguan Rang took a deep breath and said, this kind of arrangement? How do you expect me to accept it? Jiang Pingji said, I'm just preparing for the worst. I will try my best to prevent it from happening. Wenjing should have confidence. Qiguan Rang looked at Jiang Pingji with slightly red eyes. The little bit of joy he felt just now was gone. He was originally looking forward to the day his feet set foot in the capital of Beiyuan, but now he felt that he had lost interest. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, I am the chosen one by Wenjing. You should believe that I can sweep away all obstacles and no one can stop me. Qiguan Rang said, yes, that's true. A brave person should move forward with indomitable will, but the Lord had given him some funeral arrangements. What did this mean? It meant that this brave person was also confused and hesitant about the future. She was not sure if she could win. Because of this worry, she gave her funeral arrangements and prepared for the worst. How could Qiguan Rang not be worried? My lord, do you know what my only wish in this life is? What is it? Qiguan Rang said, I want to see you with my own eyes. Only you ascend to the throne and rule over the world. No one but you. Chapter 1833. After another month there was good news from Xichang. Fu Wang's battle was very boring, really very boring. There was a feeling that Dongqing, Zhongzhao, and Nanxing were trying their best to create a scene of chaos, but Xichang was just playing house. When he first received the military conscription order, Fu Wang was very excited. He thought that he could show off his skills, make countless contributions and defeat the enemy. But in the end, he solemnly issued a military order to his lord and brought more than 200,000 soldiers to conquer Xichang. He thought that there would be a hard battle, but in the end, Xichang's operations were beyond his imagination. The army conquered the border of Xichang, killed a group of bandits and destroyed 2 villages. When they captured the captives and interrogated them, they said that they were the emperor. Emperor? Fu Wang looked at the bandit emperor in confusion. He was dressed in hemp and gray cloth. When he captured someone and interrogated them, they said that they were the prime minister. Prime minister. A bandit village has 200 people and half of them have official positions. Why don't you go to heaven? When Fu Wang heard that the emperor made a dark-faced shrew empress and a widow in her 40s his favorite concubine, His expression could no longer be described with words. Even children don't play house so casually. Aren't you adults ashamed of yourselves? This was not what made Fu Wang feel the most hopeless. Not long after the 200,000-strong army invaded Xichang, they received envoys from several forces. After careful questioning, the larger ones only had half a province, and the smaller ones had 1 to 2,000 people. The smaller ones had big ambitions. Some called themselves feudal lords, and some had already proclaimed themselves emperors. They hoped that Fu Wang would leave their land in the name of the country. If he didn't leave, there would be serious consequences if the two countries became enemies. Fu Wang was just a commander. He couldn't bear the responsibility. Fu Wang was speechless. Could these people not live in their own world and keep on blabbering? Why couldn't he bear the responsibility? His lord had given him more than 200,000 elites to be fully in charge of the war here. He could even capture the emperor and kill him first before reporting. His lord had delegated power like a flood. Why didn't Fu Wang have the right to bear the responsibility? They don't know what they're talking about. Lead the troops and flatten them. One word, beat him up, mother****. There was no need to talk about anything else when it came to war. The moment Fu Wang spoke, the arrogant fellows scattered like birds and beasts. In order to resist Fu Wang's army, it was said that Xichang had organized 100 feudal vassals' oath ceremony to resist Fu Wang's attack. 100 feudal vassals, a general assembly. No, back then when his lord participated in the Huang River Conference, the 20 or so feudal vassals were already enough. Xichang was not bad, 100 feudal vassals. This title sounded awesome and Fu Wang had been looking forward to it for 2 days at first. It was only when the fight really started that he realized that the other party was just a piece of paper. It wasn't that the enemy didn't have enough troops. In fact, the 100 feudal vassals had gathered 400,000 soldiers and horses to confront Fu Wang across the river. However, a war wasn't won just because they had more people. To say that the enemy's 400,000 soldiers and horses were scattered like sand would be a compliment. The various feudal vassals were not united, each had their own little schemes, each fought their own battles. Fu Wang led his troops and defeated them as soon as they met face to face. Then the enemy gave up resisting and began to run for their lives. To be honest, even the extras weren't so perfunctory. In this battle, Fu Wang created a world record that would be famous in later generations. The record of killing the leaders of the feudal vassals in one battle. Fu Wang completed 44 kills by himself. Underscore smiley face, angle. Underscore the so-called 100 feudal vassals had been eliminated by him in one go. It was a title that sounded awesome, but Fu Wang couldn't be happy. He felt that his intelligence and military talent were being ruthlessly rubbed against the ground by these enemies. Just by rubbing against him he would lose some of his intelligence. Would he become mentally retarded after this battle? The 100 feudal vassals of Xichang spent 2 months to gather the 400,000 troops, but it only took 4 hours for them to collapse. After a deeper understanding, Fu Wang deeply understood how overboard his lord was. He would rather lead the troops to attack the North Yuan. At least the enemy wouldn't be so retarded, right? Of course, Jiang Pingji only chuckled at this. The intelligence of the North Yuan wasn't very high. Jiang Pingji only needed to watch the enemy court death and then guard their corpses. There weren't many times when she had to properly set up a battle formation to fight a battle. No matter how bad Fu Wang was, he still managed to get the title of 44 kills and saw the grand occasion of the 100 feudal vassals attacking Fu Wang. What did Jiang Pingji have? Snow. The sky was full of snow, freezing people to death. Smiley-faced, report. Fu Wang rubbed his brows and said, "What now?" The soldier who reported the news said that the scouts had caught a group of suspicious people who claimed to be the emperor of Xichang. Fu Wang was speechless. It might be hard to believe, but Fu Wang had gathered the 6 imperial pills, not long ago. Did another person want to achieve the achievement of summoning the dragon god? Another bunch of bluffs. Just drag them out and kill them. What kind of person claimed to be an emperor? Was the word emperor so cheap? Fu Wang had always hoped that his lord could ascend to the throne, but in the end the emperor was so cheap. He felt suffocated just thinking about it. In the end, the emperor this time was not ordinary. What is this? Fu Wang opened the item presented by the soldier and saw a jade seal. Interesting. The jade seals of the previous emperors were either made of wood, granite, or cheap and low-quality jade. The quality of this jade seal looks pretty good. As a boorish man, Fu Wang did not know much about anything other than war. When he chose his spoils of war, he would choose the biggest, brightest, and best-looking ones, or simple and crude gold and silver treasures. He did not know much about jade, but he felt that this jade seal was of good quality. As for how good it was, he could not tell. So, when the people around him told him that this jade seal was of excellent quality and was very likely to be a real jade seal, he was dumbfounded. Drag the person here and interrogate him. Where did he steal this jade seal? If he did not ask, he would not know. Once he asked, his 3 views were all shattered. The person who was captured was indeed the Emperor of Xichang, the real Emperor of Xichang. Accompanying him were his Empress and his ministers. Fu Wang stared at the person for a long time but could not see the so-called aristocratic temperament. Looking left and right, did he not look like a farmer doing farm work? The Empress beside him also had wrinkled skin and white hair. Her hands were frostbitten, and her fingertips were cracked and had thick calluses from farm work. If this was really the royal family, Fu Wang could understand why there were more than 100 feudal lords in Xichang. To many people, the royal family was a religion. With such a collapse of religion, how could order not collapse? The emperor earned money from farming, the palace earned pocket money from farming, and the concubines were sold to disharmonious places to earn money from their bodies. The so-called ministers in villages with less than 100 households were involved in domestic trifles. Wait, what happened to the jade seal? They were so poor. Fu Wang did not believe that they would not pawn the jade seal to pay back the money. The Emperor of Xichang stammered as he explained. They had taken advantage of the time when Fu Wang was harvesting the heads to send the guards to retrieve it. The jade seal was the symbol of the emperor. With the jade seal he might be able to trick some people to get close to him. Fu Wang. The Battle of Xichang was probably a stain that he would never be able to erase in his life. Genius in a second, remember this site's address. Mobile version. Chapter 1834. Because of the uniqueness of Xichang, Fu Wang's army had been advancing triumphantly all this while. It was unbelievably smooth. Every time Fu Wang read the battle report, he felt like he was daydreaming. Xichang was a country after all. How could it be so fragile? Why would a country be divided into hundreds of pieces, each ruling their own affairs and fighting their own wars? Was he worried that the enemy's stomach would not be able to digest it, so he took the initiative to cut it into small pieces? He had clearly won, but Fu Wang had the illusion that he was going bald. I'm bald from worry. This kind of victory came too easily. Even playing house did not dare to be so casual. Isn't that good? Meng Hun couldn't understand Fu Wang's train of thought. Fu Wang wanted his enemy to be as stupid as a retard, but Fu Wang just sighed. If the enemy was very strong, wouldn't their side suffer heavy casualties? Fu Wang said, "It's good, but I don't feel comfortable." There was no sense of accomplishment at all. It was too uncomfortable. Along the way, Fu Wang had been eagerly looking forward to meeting an evenly matched enemy. In the end, even when he overtook the enemy at the bend and took down Xichang before the Lord recovered the North Yuan, the enemy he hoped for still did not appear. No, it would be more accurate to say that they appeared, but due to the huge difference in strength, they only managed to struggle a little before they were flattened by Fu Wang, who was armed to the teeth with a cannon. Smiley face, angle. Xichang was divided into more than 100 pieces, and the largest piece was only half a prefecture or so. How many soldiers could they have in total? There were more than 200,000 elites under Fu Wang's command. It was an exaggeration to say that each person's spit could push down the enemy's walls. It wasn't that the enemy was too weak. It was clear that the power levels of the two sides weren't on the same level. 2 days after the news of Fu Wang's great victory spread, Jiang Pingji completely flattened the North Yuan. The speed of Jiang Pingji's growth shocked the salted fish in the streaming room, who had watched Jiang Pingji's growth. At that moment, a rich salted fish said, "Hell-killing field, I don't think it's strange. When there was no money, it would take a long time to earn 10 or 20,000 yuan. There were all kinds of schemes, all kinds of saving money, all kinds of calculations to survive. When he was filthy rich and had a net worth of hundreds of millions, would it still be difficult to earn 10 or 20,000? If it was placed in the bank, it would be more than that. I think the host is in such a state now. She has long passed the most difficult years of hard work. He had millions of troops under him. If he couldn't even take down Beiyuan and Xichang in such a state, wouldn't he be surprisingly weak?" Tudu Feichio, oh my god, when I got disconnected from the internet after a business trip, the streamer had already finished playing? In Yueja Zhuge Qinma. As the first batch of followers, shouldn't we prepare to celebrate the host's ascension? Cafeteria Daffin Auntie, okay. I've already thought of a way to help. The cafeteria window will be half price all day long. Lan Rue Yubuja, so fast? Could the host arrange for the ascension to happen during the Dream of 1,000 Years event? Perhaps there will be a European emperor who can represent us to attend the host's coronation ceremony. The real name system envies this European emperor, the European emperor among European emperors. Poor Taoist sees your chrysanthemum is poisonous. It might not be that lucky. Who knows where the lucky emperor was sent to? The last time he dreamt of 1,000 years, he was on a deserted island. It was said to be the southernmost of the 5 nations, second only to the place of execution. The last time he dreamt of it, he was in the northernmost part of the northern abyss, and he even froze to death. Wujiang Zakai, the one at the southernmost. Isn't that lucky? He ate oysters for a whole day. I'm dying of cravings. Guangyin Y, the northernmost one of the north abyss isn't that bad. In the end, the host carried him back like a princess. The real name system envies him. The salted fishes were chattering away. Each of them was planning to organize some kind of ascension activity. For this activity, they had waited for a whole 17 years. There were only 4 more months before it would be 18 years. Tudu Feichio, the most long-lasting confession in the world is, I'll accompany you to wait for the host to ascend to the throne and for her child to ascend to the throne. Inua Chingchang, forget it. I've been waiting for the host to ascend to the throne for half my life. If the host's child ascends to the throne, I'll have to wait for my child or grandson to burn the video disc for me. I didn't expect to wait for this day in my lifetime. Unknowingly, tears streamed down my cheeks. Marin Ruhua, it's the Qingming festival in 2 months. I can finally visit my grandfather's grave and tell him that the host he has been following for 7 or 8 years has finally come to fruition. Her smiley face, Engel. I always thought it was just a joke. I didn't expect it to actually happen to me. When these salted fishes first entered the streaming room, they probably didn't expect to accompany Jiang Pingji for so many years. 17 years and 8 months were too long. Other people's childhood and youth were XX TV dramas, XX games and XX cartoons. Their youth and childhood were Jiang Pingji. What's more, some people's partners were Jiang Pingji smiley face, Engel, Di Lao Tianhuang, ha. I want to laugh just thinking about it. Among the graduates from the previous batch, there was a girl who wore a white wedding dress and took a wedding photo with Jiang Pingji. What was even worse was that there were many boys in that batch who also wore wedding dresses to marry the streamer. The streamer was probably the only scumbag woman who could still laugh and joke around with a bunch of concubines while bigamy wasn't against the law. Jiang Pingji, who was the scumbag, expressed that she wouldn't take the blame. On this day, before closing the streaming room, Jiang Pingji solemnly performed a federal military salute to the salted fishes. Thank you, everyone, for accompanying me for more than 10 years. May the spirit of the Federal Army be with you. Most of the salted fishes laughed and accepted the salute. They had been criticized by Jiang Pingji too many times. It was rare that the host was willing to swallow her pride and salute them. It was simply exhilarating. Only a few salted fishes figured out that something was wrong from Jiang Pingji's actions. No matter how they looked at it, it seemed like a final farewell. Could it be that when they woke up tomorrow morning, they wouldn't be able to find this familiar room number anymore? The salted fishes were flustered and wanted to ask for clarification, but they were too few in number. The bullet screen was drowned by the laughing and joking comments. Before Jiang Pingji closed the streaming room, she said, I look forward to the day of my ascension to the throne and drinking and chatting with one of you. As soon as she finished speaking, the screen of the streaming room was completely shut down. I knew this day would come. That night, Jiang Pingji ate, washed up and worked as usual. The moon was in the middle of the sky, and it was approaching midnight. There was a knock on the door. Jiang Pingji's hand paused when she heard the movement. After thinking about it, she put down her pen and picked up the god-slaying sword as she got up. The reflection on the door was very familiar. Jiang Pingji stared at it for a long time, then raised her hand and opened the door. The two of them looked at each other silently, just like when they first met. One of them knelt respectfully while the other looked down calmly. You shouldn't be here, Xiaoyu. Someone who was supposed to be in Wanzhou had suddenly appeared in the northernmost city of Beiyuan, the city of ice and snow. This was not something that could be done by humans. Xiaoyu knows that I shouldn't be here, but someone asked me to do it. I have no choice. Please forgive me, my lord. Jiang Pingji looked at Suke calmly. Suke smiled and said, It seems that my lord understands. Do you want to make a trip? Jiang Pingji asked in return, What if I don't? Suke said, Nothing. It's just that the two princes and Zixiao will encounter some trouble. I'm afraid my lord won't want to see that. Jiang Pingji said, Wait for me to change. Suka smiled and said, I'll be waiting. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 1835. The cold wind whistled outside the house. Jiang Pingji had changed into a clean and neat outfit. The god-slaying sword hung on her waist, her expression as calm as usual. The snow outside is heavy. Why don't you put on an extra coat, my lord? Suka spoke with familiarity. The weather is cold, but the heart is cold. What's the difference between wearing one more coat and one less coat? Jiang Pingji took half a step past him and tilted her head. Lead the way. I hope it's not too far. My body is as strong as a bear. I can take off 2 more coats. You, on the other hand, should keep warm in your old age. Suka smiled and bent down to pick up the lantern. He slowly led the way in front. The cold wind blew the flying snow into their hair. The flying snow was slightly thicker. From afar it looked like white hair. I suddenly hope that the snow will be heavier. Jiang Pingji and Suka maintained a distance of about 1 meter. The person in front of them carried the lantern and walked slowly in the snow. There was only the sound of the two of them stepping on the snow, breathing, and the sound of the wind. The seemingly noisy night scene of winter snow gave people a different kind of silence. In this case, if something really happens to me, I'll be considered to have lived a long life. Suka did not answer. His back was still straight, but his fingers that held the lantern trembled slightly. She kept following Suka's guidance. He led her farther and farther away. The surrounding scenery also became lonely. Jiang Pingji said, Speaking of which, Xiaoyu, do you remember how long we've known each other? Suka did not answer. Jiang Pingji continued, I remember it was not long after the flower festival when I was 12. How can I not remember? It's an unforgettable day in my life. Jiang Pingji counted with her fingers. I don't usually pay attention to it. Now that I think about it, I'll be 30 in 2 months. To be honest, other than the group of salted fish in the streaming room, the person she had known for the longest time in this life was actually Suku. She had known the salted fish in the streaming room for 17 years and 8 months. She had also known Suku for 17 years and 8 months. They were master and servant. Jiang Pingji thought that time passed very slowly. When she turned around, she saw that everyone had changed from teenagers to young adults. They were rushing to their 30s and 40s. Based on the average age of this era, more than half of a lifetime had passed. Suku asked her. Indeed. In another 2 months and 13 days, it will be the Lord's 30th birthday. The ancient people celebrated their birthdays in a big way, such as their 30th, 40th, and 50th birthdays. Jiang Pingji said regretfully, the 30th birthday is of great significance. It's a pity that it's not a good year. It's destined that we won't be able to hold a grand celebration this year. She wanted to hold a good party, but there were 1,000 things waiting to be done everywhere. Money was needed everywhere, and it was really not suitable to waste it. Suku held onto the lamp and said, My lord has always been frugal and doesn't like extravagance and waste. I'm afraid you won't be willing to hold a grand birthday celebration. He had been by Jiang Pingji's side for a total of 17 birthdays. Every year she dealt with it with a night of longevity noodles. During those 3 years in Langya County, he was a little more extravagant. Other than eating a bowl of longevity noodles at home, he would also go out to a restaurant to buy a table of food and wine. Jiang Pingji smiled. Xiaoyu knows me best. Every time she said that she wanted to have a good birthday, she would always fail for one reason or another. Everything would be simple. To put it bluntly, he was still used to being simple. The two of them chatted as they walked. After walking for an hour, they finally saw the flickering candlelight in the distance. Jiang Pingji placed her hand in front of her eyes. Tsk, this place is really remote. Suku said, After all, it's something that can't be seen in the light. Does my lord still expect to do it openly and honorably? Jiang Pingji was silent for a moment. What you said makes sense, but won't this place be too harsh for my 3 babies at home? The corner of Suku's mouth twitched. He said calmly, Although the sparrow is small, it has all the organs. It even has the earthly dragon charcoal and fire. How can it freeze them? Jiang Pingji said calmly, That's true. It can't afford to pay for them if they freeze. When they were only 100 meters away from the field, Jiang Pingji suddenly said, Xiaoyu, I've always done things with a clear conscience, but only you. I've always owed you. Do you have any resentment in your heart? Jiang Pingji stopped in her tracks. Suku glanced at the field behind Jiang Pingji. His expression was a little absent-minded and disappointed. Listen to the truth? The truth is, if my lord comes out of this place, I won't resent you. If it's not you who comes out, Don't blame me for holding a grudge against you for the rest of my life. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, it sounds like you're under a lot of pressure. When Qiguan Rang said that he hoped to see the day she ascended to the throne, Salted Fish said that he wanted to watch the golden age with her. She even made a verbal promise that they would drink and chat merrily. Now Suku said that he would blame her if she couldn't come out. Every time this happened, she felt that they were not only little princesses but also masters. Suku said, my lord has always been confident and conceited. Why are you so timid now? Jiang Pingji pinched her chin and said, maybe it's because I'm old. After all, I'm a middle-aged man approaching 30. Suku chuckled. I'll believe your nonsense. Jiang Pingji waved at Suku and went to the field without looking back. Suku looked at the entrance of the field. The corner of his lips held a cold smile. He stood alone in the snow. He didn't know if it was an old friend who had accompanied him for 17 years and 8 months, or a stranger in the skin of an old friend. Thinking about it, it's really sad. The so-called God wantonly manipulated people's lives. He gave as he pleased and took away as he pleased. Mortals were just dolls to be manipulated. From the God's point of view, mortals who had no ability to resist could only choose to be silent in order to protect themselves. Little did they know that there would come a day when mortals would bare their fangs. I hope the person who comes out is you, my lord. Suku raised his hand and caressed the dagger hidden in his sleeve. His expression was unreadable and gloomy. At the same time, Jiang Pingji pushed open the door to the main courtyard. She was surprised to find familiar faces inside. Why are you all gathered here for a meeting? Jiang Pingji smiled and flicked the snow off her shoulders. The first prince, who had been sobbing silently, saw the familiar faces. His big eyes lit up. Mother. Jiang Pingji smiled. Well, I haven't seen you in a few months. Lian's pronunciation is so clear. There were several iron cages in the main hall. She saw her daughter leaning on the iron bars and looking at her pitifully. Mother, hug. Her Highness Lian reached out for a hug. His Highness Yan, who was in another cage, rolled his eyes and gave Jiang Pingji a look. Finish the battle quickly. Don't waste time. At that moment, the people in the other 3 big cages woke up. It hurts. Where is this, sister? It was Lu Zhao's voice. Shut up. Don't be noisy. It was Lu Shi's voice. Wei Xi sat in his cell and looked at Jiang Pingji. He seemed to be sleepwalking. Beiyuan Wanzhou was 1,000 miles away. Was he hallucinating? Lu Shi, Lu Zhao and Wei Xi. Jiang Lian, Jiang Yan, the listless and sleepy Feng Yu, and the panda girl who was tightly hugged by Jiang Yan. And Sun Mei stood in the middle and confronted Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji said, don't you know how to greet your old master? Sun Mei's expression was wooden and her eyes were dull. She looked like a puppet that could move. Jiang Pingji said, you hit it well enough. You used the opportunity of marrying Xiaoyu to clear your name. Sun Mei finally moved. She spoke in an electronic voice. This is just a coincidence. It's the maid's fault for thinking she's smart. You're also stupid enough to hand the opportunity to me. What do you mean? She wouldn't admit that she was stupid. Sun Mei raised her hand and pointed at herself. This maid was just a chess piece that someone set up. Jiang Pingji crossed her arms in front of her chest. I know that the streaming system of the woman whose name I don't know is a part of you. Sun Mei and Takshu were her chess pieces at first. Takshu went down the dark path, and Sun Mei took the opportunity to jump out of the swamp. Sun Mei said calmly, mortals always think that they resist fate and arrangements, but in fact they just fall into a bigger trap. Jiang Pingji said, Sun Mei didn't get rid of you? Of course not. She thought she got rid of me. From the beginning to the end she was under my control. Jiang Pingji was silent. And you, thinking you're smart, actually married a little maid to Suku, and even entrusted Suku with an important task. Jiang Pingji's expression didn't change. She didn't seem surprised by the situation at all. What did you do to Suku? Sun Mei laughed, but the electronic voice sounded weird. Nothing. I just let him understand what a wise man submits to circumstances means. You boast that you can see through people's hearts, but you don't know that Suku has already prepared a backup plan. No matter if you or I get out of here alive today, Suku will make the one who gets out his master. As long as Suku doesn't change his stance, your trusted subordinates can't do anything about it. Jiang Pingji, you spent almost 18 years to make a wedding dress for me. How does it feel? This is the first debt that I'll collect from the Jiang family. Jiang Pingji said, it doesn't feel good. Just take the farm if you want it. You make it sound like I'm poor. Sun Mei, a smile froze for a moment. It's good that you can accept it. After saying that, she took out a dagger and lifted His Highness, who was hugging the panda tightly, out of the iron prison. Jiang Pingji, since you don't value it, then give up your body. Otherwise these people will lose their lives. Especially these twins, you gave birth to them. Their skin is so tender, I only need to make a light cut on their necks and they will die. Wei Si's face turned pale when he heard that. How dare you hurt His Highness? Sun Mei rolled her eyes at Wei Si. Don't worry, it will be your turn. Jiang Pingji pouted. You're getting more and more depraved. You can't win in a direct fight, but you've learned to play dirty tricks. Sun Mei said, as long as I can win, I can tolerate any means. Jiang Pingji said, what should I do? Sun Mei pointed at the gloves on the ground. Here, just put this on. Jiang Pingji picked it up and looked at it. What is this? Sun Mei said, it's a separation of the physical body and the spiritual body. That's how Lu Shi died. Lu Shi and Lu Zhao's expressions changed drastically. Jiang Pingji asked, what if I don't do it? Then I can only grab their spiritual bodies one by one in front of you, including your important ministers and close friends. Jiang Pingji, I've been forced to a dead end. I'm capable of anything. If I really die, I'll drag someone down with me. Jiang Pingji sighed. Sky Brain, you're so depraved that it makes my heart ache. The former Sky Brain of the Federation had escaped for 2,000 years, and now it was still slicing itself into pieces like cutting steak. Now it was still using such a shameless method. It was so depraved that it made one's heart ache. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 1836. Do I need the children of the Jiang family to feel sorry for me? Don't be so pretentious. Sky Brain used Xuanmei's face to show a ferocious expression. The crazy look on her face completely destroyed the beauty of her face. Jiang Pingji's eyes were filled with pity and pity. You call this pretentious? I feel sorry for you from the bottom of my heart. I feel sorry for you. You are such a failure. Sky Brain was so angry that its face was about to crack. Xuanmei's face turned green and black because of its emotions. It was as disgusting as if it had swallowed countless flies. Lu Zhao, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but be speechless. He murmured, Sister is really a real man. She still doesn't forget to provoke at such a time. The enemy had her weakness in their hands and held her flesh and blood hostage. Jiang Pingji could still be calm and composed. She made the enemy jump in anger. She was simply testing the boundaries of death. If it was Lu Zhao, he wouldn't dare to do it at all. He could only tuck his tail between his legs and behave himself. Lu Shi sat in the iron prison and sneered. A person is about to die. What's the harm in nagging? Moreover, what Jiang Pingji said was the truth. The dignified Sky Brain had indeed become what it was today because there were countless holes in its brain. Of all the things it could learn, it had to learn how to be sliced. Now it was neither a man nor a woman. Its strength was neither strong nor weak. It was even ridiculed by a junior like Jiang Pingji. Thinking back to 2,000 years ago, Sky Brain was hammered by Jiang Pingji's ancestors. 2,000 years later, it was hammered by the descendants of its old enemy. It was really regressing. 2,000 years, it just grew older but not its brain. No, its brain might have even shrunk. Although Lu Shi also had Sky Brain's 7 emotions and 6 desires, he really refused to admit that his original body's IQ was so low. An unqualified but very active villain. Didn't he see that Jiang Pingji had spent all her efforts on conquering the world instead of Sky Brain? What did it mean? It meant that she found conquering the farm more challenging than killing Sky Brain. Being Sky Brain was such a failure. Lu Zhao's eyes were as innocent and pure as a bunny's. He wanted to ask his father if the person Lu Shi mentioned was referring to his sister, Jiang Pingji, or the monster that controlled Xuanmei's body. However, his father probably wouldn't answer if he asked. The Jiang clan's mouths are really despicable. They don't have much strength, but they sure have a glib tongue. Sky Brain quickly regained his composure. His face was cold and impatient, but he was unhappy that Jiang Pingji had taken advantage of him. So he laughed coldly and exposed an old matter from many years ago. Jiang Pingji, do you know how your parents died? They thought they could save each other by committing suicide, so they killed themselves in front of me? Jiang Pingji sneered. Look at you now, how miserable and downtrodden you are. You can only use a weak man and 2 children to threaten me. The key thing is that this threat isn't reliable. If I don't care about them, don't care about the so-called important ministers, and don't even care about everything in this world, what can you do to me? Can you still rely on what you have in your hands? Sky Brain's expression almost cracked. In the past, you enjoyed the best resources in the world, but now you're like a street thug who bullies weaker people to obtain resources. I really don't know what you're doing. Jiang Pingji really didn't know what it was after. Revenge? Wasn't revenge to make life difficult for the enemy and better for oneself? What was the result? The Federation's backbone had never been broken by war, and Sky Brain had also fled like a rat for 2,000 years. What do you know? It doesn't matter what I do. What matters is that as long as I'm alive, the people of the Federation won't have a good time. Sky Brain was very stubborn about this. It was alive to find ways to make trouble for the Human Alliance and find trouble for its former enemies. That was its motivation. I'm done talking nonsense. If you don't give me your body, I'll really kill your daughter. Don't think I'm just scaring you. Wei Ci looked at Jiang Pingji, who gave him a reassuring smile. If I give you my body, will you let them go? Sky Brain said disdainfully, of course. On the other side, Lu Zhao also didn't understand what was going on. Sister is very skilled in martial arts. Can't she subdue them by force? Lu Shi said, she can subdue them, but it's useless. Sky Brain's methods were despicable, but it wasn't brainless. On the contrary, it had fled for 2,000 years. No one could compare to its suspicion and vigilance. Knowing that Jiang Pingji would threaten it, how could it appear in front of Jiang Pingji? It controlled Sun Mei's body remotely. It would only appear when Sun Mei died or was trapped and unable to escape. If Jiang Pingji chose to refuse, Qiguan Rang and the others wouldn't be able to escape with their lives. The problem now was, where was Jiang Pingji? While talking, Jiang Pingji had already put on the glove. After putting it on, she found that her spirit and body tended to separate. What is this glove? It's an old object that imprisons souls. Sky Brain said, the souls of the direct descendants of the Jiang family who were killed back then are all in it. They suffer day after day until they turn into nothingness. Now you're no exception. I'll make your soul fly away and scatter. It's a pity that the souls of your biological parents are too weak. They dispersed 3 years ago. I don't know how long you, a descendant of the Jiang family, can last in there. Jiang Pingji was about to say something, but she suddenly found that she was gradually losing control of her body. The glove, which was full of strange patterns, produced a huge suction force. TSK, you can't achieve great things by being emotional. Looking coldly at Jiang Pingji, who closed her eyes and collapsed to the ground, Sky Brain sneered. It turned out that stripping away the 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures was the right thing to do. Emotions could only lead to bad things. Jiang Pingji was threatened and schemed against because of her emotions. Her soul was imprisoned. As the 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures it had stripped away, Lu Shi had fallen in love with a mortal and ruined its plans time and time again. Sky Brain manipulated Sun Mei to put its hand between Jiang Pingji's eyebrows. After checking again and again, it confirmed that Jiang Pingji's soul was no longer in the body. Is this the end? Lu Zhao's hair stood on end as he watched Sun Mei pull out the god-slaying sword and walk step by step to the front of his cage. Sun Mei sneered at him. Wrong, it's just the beginning. Lu Zhao. What did it mean? After listening, Lu Shi's expression suddenly turned cold. He suddenly thought of a possibility. Could it be that Jiang Pingji, he saw Sun Mei chop the cage that imprisoned Lu Zhao into pieces? Lu Zhao looked terrified, but his body stood up uncontrollably. When did you hide in Zhao's body? Sky's Brain sneered. Look at you, a good-for-nothing thing. The son you raised is also a good-for-nothing. If your son had a bit of ambition, I would have directly schemed to push him to the top. However, he is not completely useless. At least he is one of the few targets that Jiang Pingji does not guard against. It is very safe to hide in his body, but it is really an eyesore to see him so stupid every day. Lu Zhao was almost crying. He had been thinking about where the monster was hiding in his body. Lu Shi was so angry that he pounded the iron bars. When on earth did you set your eyes on Zhao? Sky Brain snorted and said calmly, don't worry, it was not long. Your son did not have much contact with Jiang Pingji, but it was not little either. If I hid in his body earlier, wouldn't Jiang Pingji find out? It was just a matter of a few years. When I absorb the luck of the entire plane and recover my strength, I will slowly settle the score with you and your stupid son. The ancestors of the Jiang family did not do anything to me, but his descendants acted atrociously on my head. If you worked harder and cooperated with me, I would not have schemed and endured for so long. Lu Zhao looked at his body in horror. He walked in front of his sister's body and sat down cross-legged. His body uncontrollably made a gesture with his hands, as if something was drilling out. It was a mass of turbid liquid-like substance. It drilled into Jiang Pingji's body through the eyes, ears, mouth and nose. After a few breaths, the body opened its eyes again. It got up and felt it, then sneered. You are indeed the son of luck of the plain. The luck is so strong that it makes people want to eat it. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 1837. Wei Si looked at the strange expression on the familiar face and his heart sank. Where's my lord? He stared at the strange Jiang Pingji, and the hand holding the iron bars couldn't help but clench, the veins on the back of his hand bulging. Tisk, were you daydreaming just now? Or am I? Do you even need to ask this question? Sky Brain showed a hint of joy mixed with ferocity. Of course I'm your lord, otherwise who do you think I am? I don't want to hear this kind of question a second time. The other half of Wei Si's heart also sank. The person in front of him was definitely not his lord. Since this demon occupied his lord's body, where did his lord go now? Was it really as this demon said, that her soul was imprisoned and tortured? No. Impossible. His lord was not someone who would throw herself into a trap. He and his lord had known each other for 2 lifetimes, and they had been together for decades. When would she fight a battle unprepared? Thinking of this, his flustered heart calmed down. How could his lord lose to such a monster that was neither human nor ghost? Tiske, what's with that look? Are you doubting my identity? Wei Si said coldly, what kind of look is that? You know very well that you're not my lord, I know very well in my heart. What's fake can't be real, it really can't be fake. So what if you occupied my lord's body with sorcery? Do you really think you can deceive the eyes of the world? Sky Brain couldn't help but sneer. It thought that the man Jiang Pingji liked should have some brains, but it didn't expect him to be a fool. I really don't know what Jiang Pingji sees in you. Is it just this face? Heavenly Brain stretched out its hand and pinched Wei Si's lower jaw, instantly leaving a mark. Its eyes were full of contempt. Well, there is indeed such a possibility. After all, your brain isn't good enough, and your face is the only thing you can barely look at. You're not even as good as Su Ku. I really don't know why Jiang Pingji chose you. Naive and stupid. Don't you know that Su Ku is my man? Even if he's not famous, he controls the overall situation. As long as he says I'm Jiang Pingji, even if someone doubts it, who dares to say it? Whoever dares to doubt it will die. Do you really think there will be someone who doesn't want to live? Wei Si was in so much pain that he almost couldn't speak. He felt that his jaw was about to be crushed. But, life is indeed precious, but it's not the most precious thing in the world. You're not human, so how would you know the choices of humans? Wei Si endured the pain and said, using one's life as a hostage to deal with mediocre people. How do you know that Xiaoyu betrayed the Lord? Even if he really betrayed her, it could only be said that he had failed to live up to the Lord's expectations and high hopes. Other than him, there are many others who are willing to speak up for the sake of finding the Lord. You will not succeed. Sky's Brain sneered. If it weren't for the fact that many people know about your relationship with Jiang Pingji, making it difficult for them to lay their hands on you, I could kill you right now. It loosened its grip on Wei Si, as if it was throwing away an infectious dirty thing. But it's good to keep you. Sky Brain's eyes were bloodshot. I can show you what reality is. Since the birth of mankind, the nature of mankind was selfish. Many people would harm the interests of others for their own interests. Now they can protect themselves by remaining silent. Do you think they will risk their lives to speak up for Jiang Pingji? Let me tell you, they will only choose to pretend to be deaf and mute. As for you, I will keep you alive and let you see with your own eyes how Jiang Pingji's soul is tortured until it disappears. Wei Si said hoarsely, your plot will never succeed. Then let's wait and see. Sky Brain was in a very good mood, probably because victory was in its grasp. Tsk, this is the Jiang family's next generation of whelps. Sky Brain carried over the sobbing Royal Highness Yen from Xuanmei's arms. The other twin was angrily slapping the bars of the iron prison, saying, don't bully or scare me, while saying, stay in the nest. Sky Brain hated humans and naturally hated human whelps. One was weak and loved to cry, the other was noisy and incessant. Both of them made it lose its patience. It hooked its fingers around Royal Highness Yan's chubby little face. Its dangerous tone made Wei Si's heart tighten, for fear that the monster would hurt Royal Highness. Be good, call me mother. From now on, I will be your mother. Royal Highness Yen cried even harder. His wailing softened Wei Si's heart. Cold. The nest is cold. Go away. Royal Highness Yen cried so hard that she was out of breath. Soon, her eyes were swollen and red like a rabbit's. At first, Sky Brain had the patience to tease her, but it was soon annoyed by the child's crying. It wanted to throw her to the ground and trample on her. You really don't know what's good for you. Sky Brain threw the child into Xuanmei's arms. The latter took it with a pale face and patted Royal Highness Yan's back to comfort her. Lu Zhao saw all this and was so scared that his legs turned into noodles. It's over, it's really over. Did my sister really fail miserably? Looking at the disheveled Wei Si and his two nieces who were crying uncontrollably, Lu Zhao did not feel good at all. He was anxious and guilty. Who would have thought that the demon was hiding in his body? Maybe the demon had used Lu Zhao's body to do something bad that no one knew about. He felt tired at the thought of this possibility. Among the people present, only Lu Shi looked indifferent, as if all the noise around him had nothing to do with him. Okay, it's getting late. Let's go back. Sky Brain was ready to leave, still holding the thing that imprisoned Jiang Pingji's soul in its hand. At that moment, Lu Shi asked it, "Do you really think it's over?" Sky Brain sneered. "Do you think Jiang Pingji can still turn the tables?" Lu Shi sighed. "I think she probably didn't fail miserably, so how can she turn the tables?" Sky Brain's heart skipped a beat and it suddenly asked, "What do you mean?" "I mean you're too stupid." An unfamiliar mature female voice came into everyone's ears. They couldn't help but look for the source of the voice. A tall, sexy, and mature red-haired woman had appeared in everyone's field of vision at some point in time. She had enchanting eyebrows and a deep face. The clothes she wore were very strange, be it the cut or the material. Even so, they could still feel the person's heroic temperament. This was a very good-looking foreign woman. Her already fair skin was set off by her red hair, making her look even more radiant. Lu Zhao's eyes almost popped out. Is she a human or a ghost? Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes in annoyance. "Zhao, you're so capable that you can't even recognize your sister." The unfamiliar voice and the familiar tone scared Lu Zhao so much that his body trembled. A terrible thought came to his mind. Wei Si looked at the somewhat familiar face and called out uncertainly, "Lord?" Jiang Pingji smiled. Zixiao and I have a telepathic connection. You can even recognize me like this." She teased everyone and seemed to have forgotten that Sky Brain was still present. "You?" Jiang Pingji asked in return, "What about me? Are you surprised that I'm not locked up by you?" Sky Brain looked at her incredulously. "How is this possible?" Jiang Pingji played with a jade pendant in her hand. To be precise, it was a yin-yang jade pendant. "I never fight a battle unprepared. Since I dare to appear in front of you, it's naturally because I've made thorough preparations." Sky Brain's whole face twisted when it saw the yin-yang jade pendant. Who would have thought that Jiang Pingji's soul would instantly leave her body and hide in the jade pendant, avoiding Sky Brain's detection? "So what?" Sky Brain sneered and took a step back. "Do you think you can catch me?" Jiang Pingji couldn't help but laugh. "Aren't you talking nonsense? If I'm not sure I can catch you, why would I appear now?" Sky Brain's expression froze for a moment when it heard this. It tried to leave the body but was shocked to find that it couldn't be done at all. Jiang Pingji lamented, "It's really not easy to make you, who's as sly as a fox but as stupid as a pig, take the bait." Sky Brain was too good at hiding and hiding. It was also very suspicious. It was really difficult to catch this slippery fellow. "In order to make your real body show up, I've made a lot of preparations and plans." Jiang Pingji played with the yin-yang jade pendant, a teasing and sarcastic expression on her face. "I know you're paranoid. If I don't put out a big enough bait, you won't take the bait." Lu Zhao said blankly, "So, sister, everyone here is bait that you put out?" Not only were there Wei Si's two nieces, but also his pitiful younger brother. He confirmed with his eyes that she was really his sister. Jiang Pingji said, "You can say that. After all, you can't catch the wolf without risking the child." Lu Zhao, QAQ. Lu Shi snorted coldly and mocked his son. She can bear to watch Wei Si being bullied. "Why are you sad?" He didn't see his position and identity clearly. Lu Zhao, after being defeated by his sister, he was stabbed by his own father. He felt that today was too exciting. "Do you really think you've won?" Sky Brain was so angry that he laughed. He snatched Prince Yen and the god-slaying saber from Xuanmei's arms. He was ready to kill the little bastard in front of Jiang Pingji. In the end, the seemingly sharp god-slaying saber couldn't cut down. Sky Brain and Prince Yen looked at each other silently. Prince Yen, who had been crying just now, said calmly, "Shouldn't you hit Jiang Pingji?" What did Jiang Pingji's scheming against Sky Brain have to do with Pei Yi? Fortunately, Zi was the spirit of the god-slaying saber. Otherwise, according to Jiang Pingji's character, she would most likely leave him in the lurch. What the F***ck. The old chief deeply felt that Jiang Pingji was unreliable. He didn't know what he was thinking when he chose her as his successor. Little did he know that Sky Brain was feeling the same way. Not only was he F***king a dog, but he was also F***king a husky. Sky Brain sneered. So what if they caught me? No one in this world can kill me. At most, they can continue to seal me like before. It's not like I haven't been sealed for tens of thousands of years. But as long as I'm not dead, I'll get my revenge sooner or later. Prince Yen said again, by the way, I forgot to mention that Jiang Pingji has awakened the ancient bloodline of the Jiang family. She can kill you. You're in a very dangerous situation now. Sky Brain. Jiang Pingji, was he an outside help or a stupid teammate who was here to trick her? Didn't he just stand by and watch her suffer for a while? Jiang Pingji sneered and stretched out her hand. A strange flame rose from her palm like magic. Come, let's play with fire. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 1838. He hoped that it would be useful for other immortals, people with special abilities, immortal cultivators, aliens and non-human creatures to participate in the construction of a stable and harmonious life in the country. Work QQ Group, 7418254442 Book V Group, 8703887666 Fan Points, 5000 Guide to Live Streaming by the Empress, Squinting Eyes Face I really can live forever. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1839. I say your luck is really bad. His Highness Yen seemed to think that the situation was not chaotic enough. He looked at Tianbao, who was scurrying around like a mouse under Jiang Pingji's pressure, and deeply lamented how pitiful it was. Have you counted how many direct descendants of the Jiang family you have killed? Unfortunately, Jiang Pingji, the only survivor, has awakened the ancient bloodline that no one in the Jiang family has awakened for hundreds of years. This luck is 1 in a million. Heavenly Brain's luck was exceptionally bad. There were so many people present, but she was the one who was randomly grabbed. How many pieces was he going to cut himself into? Jiang Pingji had defeated every single one of them. The Sky Brain was always unlucky. Even when it took the initiative to apply for a job, the villains didn't accept it. This kind of luck was not good for being a villain because before the main character exploded in the universe, the villain was the most powerful. Their luck and strength were second only to the main character who had the main character's aura. From this point of view, Sky Brain was not a good villain. Especially when the main character was Jiang Pingji, the difficulty was hellish. Lu Zhao looked at His Highness Yen, who was calmly mocking the Sky Brain. Then he looked at the two protagonists of the night, who were exchanging blows so quickly that only afterimages could be seen. He silently gulped. What kind of sin did he commit in his previous life? Why did he encounter so many strange twists and turns in this life? Are you purposely provoking that monster? Lu Zhao looked at Princess Yen with fear in his eyes. Obviously, this niece of his was also a person with a story. His Highness Yen looked up at Lu Zhao and wiped the saliva off his face. You didn't see anything. Being a child was troublesome. His teeth were not neat and he would drool if he spoke too much. If a stranger saw her drooling face, it would damage her glorious image. Under Lu Zhao's watchful eyes, His Highness Yen rummaged through his robes and took out a pacifier. What are you looking at? Realizing that Lu Zhao was still looking at him, Prince Yen narrowed his eyes dangerously. Lu Zhao shrunk his neck. Even though His Highness Yen looked fierce, he felt that the other party's aura was terrifying. It was so scary that he even forgot that the two immortals were still fighting. The scene of the fight could be described as sparks and lightning. Jiang Pingji had fire in her hands and her hair was so red. When he sped up, the afterimages that he brought out were all fiery red. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Who could tell her that the supposedly godly teammate had turned into a pig? Nothing much, I just think you're very cute. Little niece, uncle has milk candy here, sheep's milk, do you want some? His Highness Yen snorted coldly. Bring it to me. Jiang Pingji couldn't take it anymore. She snatched the god-slaying sword from the Brain King's hand, stabbed it into its kidney and kicked it far away. His Royal Highness Yen said, "Be gentle. You still have to use this body for a few more years. If it's too badly damaged, no one will be able to guarantee your warranty." Jiang Pingji was speechless. For all, Ngunguo, Why didn't you say so earlier? Jiang Pingji was also angry. Had she told him earlier that she would treat this body this way? His Highness Yen said, I thought you were omnipotent, omniscient and omniscient. Who knew that you didn't know? Jiang Pengji angrily put Skybrain's hands behind its back and pressed the back of its head with her other hand. Don't try to bewitch me. I'll deal with you when I get back. Although Lu Shi's physical fitness was good, it couldn't compare to Jiang Pingji's current spiritual body. If Lu Shi's combat power was only 100th to 1,000th of her peak, then her spiritual body was half of her peak. Whether it was speed, strength or reflexes, they weren't on the same level. Skybrain had been tricked by Jiang Pingji. Its spiritual body couldn't escape the shackles of its physical body. Naturally, it was pressed to the ground and rubbed against it brainlessly. She rubbed it from one end of the room to the other until the floor was smooth. In the end, when she rubbed the body until it was about to fall apart, Pei Yi told her that the physical body didn't have a warranty. What the F***ck? Since that was the case, Jiang Pingji gave up the idea of toying with Skybrain like a mouse. She decided to end the battle quickly. Lu Zhao and the others watched helplessly as the enchanting red-haired foreign sister turned into a mist of light and merged into the physical body that Skybrain had occupied. After a while, the body lost control and fell to the ground, motionless. What's happening now? His Royal Highness Yen walked to Her Royal Highness Lien's side. Separated by the iron cage, the girl was crying so hard that her nose was running. Yes, I'm here. His Royal Highness Yen stretched out his hand through the gap in the bars and patted Her Royal Highness Lien's soft hair. Don't cry. Her Royal Highness Lien pouted, her bright red eyes tearing up again. Even though she didn't know what it was called, it had indeed left a huge trauma in her heart. She was trapped in the iron cage while others were hurting her sister. Only after many years did she realize that it was the powerlessness of the weak. His Royal Highness Yen wiped the saliva off the pacifier and stuffed it into Her Royal Highness Lien's mouth to stop her from crying. Lu Zhao couldn't help but complain, can't you get a clean pacifier? His Royal Highness Yen said slowly, there's only one. Lu Zhao immediately said in an obsequious manner, my little niece knows how to share blessings and care for her sister at such a young age. You're the best. His Royal Highness Yen snorted. He didn't like Lu Zhao's obsequiousness. At that moment, Feng Yu, who hadn't made a sound the entire night, somehow opened the iron cage and sat beside His Royal Highness Yen without a word. He took out a pacifier of the same design but a different color and a sweet milky candy. Good girl? His Royal Highness Yen patted Feng Yu's head and the latter smiled like a puppy. Lu Zhao was speechless. He didn't know where to start complaining about such double standards. Most importantly, Lu Shi looked up lazily. Can you let us out now? It was painful to be locked in the iron cage. But it hurts. At that moment, Jiang Pingji, who had been a corpse for a long time, finally moved. She lay on the ground like a salted fish and said softly, I think I need an ambulance or a nourishment chamber to heal my body. She didn't pay attention to the strength when she hit him just now. When she returned to her body, she realized that her entire body hurt. My lord? Wei Ci looked at her and didn't dare to approach her. It wasn't that he didn't recognize her, but he didn't dare to touch her since she was injured all over. Seeing the familiar Wei Ci, Jiang Pingji whimpered and said softly, Zixiao, it hurts so much. You have to hug me. Wei Ci let out a long sigh of relief and smiled. Okay, as long as you want. His Royal Highness Yen asked, where's the brain? It was Jiang Pingji's first time being carried by Wei Ci in a princess manner. She didn't want to talk to anyone for a while. I'm back. That guy is naturally finished. As he finished speaking, a bright blue ball of light appeared in his palm. Upon closer inspection, the ball of light was actually a flowing liquid. It was the purest form of spiritual energy after the brain was burned. The ball of light seemed to be attracted by something and floated up slowly. Like flowing water, it stuck to the blade of the god-slaying saber and sank into it. At that moment, the incomplete totem patterns on the blade suddenly lit up, revealing a relatively complete appearance. It was a simple drawing of a celestial being drunk and lying on the clouds. His Royal Highness Yen stared at the drawing for a long time. Jiang Pingji couldn't help but roll her eyes. It looks like you have a lot of secrets on you. Let's have a private talk later. His Royal Highness Yen came back to his senses and snorted. This drawing looks like it's missing a piece. Lu Zhao moved closer to take a closer look. Jiang Pingji said, it's indeed missing a piece. The system's 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures. Lu Shi had yet to return to his position. Naturally, it was incomplete. Lu Zhao wisely chose to shut up. He was afraid that Jiang Pingji would take the opportunity to kill Lu Shi and return to her position. Xuanmei, take the saber. I'm afraid Xiaoyu is waiting for you. Let's go together. The rest of you go back. The sudden disappearance of living people, especially the disappearance of Jiang Lian and Jiang Yan, would probably cause a huge commotion in Wanzhou. Lu Zhao asked blankly, "How do we go back?" As soon as he finished speaking, Feng Yu patted the door frame and gestured for him to come over. It turned out that a door had been erected in the room for some time. Outside the door was not winter but an exquisite courtyard. Lu Zhao was speechless. As a mortal, he had fallen into a group of celestials. The pressure was really great. When Lu Shi and the others disappeared, the door disappeared as well. Jiang Pingji said, "Xuanmei, it's been hard on you all these years." However, Xuanmei's expression was gloomy. "It's okay. I just hope that you can understand Xiaoyu's pain." Jiang Pingji said, "Of course." After leaving the farm, Xuanmei couldn't help but run to the figure waiting outside. The two of them hugged each other. Wei Ci was still a little absent-minded. "My lord, is it over?" Jiang Pingji coughed. "It's over? How is that possible?" Wei Ci's nerves suddenly tightened. He was like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bough. Jiang Pingji said angrily, "Why are you reacting so strongly?" Wei Ci was speechless. Could she blame him? Jiang Pingji said, "We, the world and the future of prosperity and peace. Everything has just begun." As she spoke, Su Ku and Xuanmei came over one after another. "After going through so many hardships and fighting with the enemy for 300 rounds, I finally didn't let down my promise to Xiaoyu." Jiang Pingji was now covered in wounds. Even though the moonlight was weak, Su Ku could see the injuries and bruises on her face and arms. "I'm back." Su Ku's eyes were slightly red as he listened. Just by looking at the injuries, he knew how much his lord had gone through. His heart ached and he was worried, but he also breathed a sigh of relief. He bowed and said, "Your subject, Su Ku, greets my lord." "Xiaoyu, do you know? That enemy was so powerful and cunning. I almost lost to it." Jiang Pingji was injured, but she was still restless. She bragged about the enemy and she was the victor who was stronger than the enemy. Su Ku repeatedly agreed. Xuanmei, who was beside him, wanted to say something but stopped. As a witness who witnessed everything and knew that Jiang Pingji's injuries were caused by someone, she was now under a lot of pressure. When it was almost dawn, they returned to the city under Jiang Pingji's unreliable directions. "Wasn't it Xiaoyu who led me here?" Logically speaking, he should have led them back. However, Su Ku said, "It was the guidance of the unseen. I didn't remember the way." It was also his first time back to the North Abyss. Jiang Pingji was speechless. At that moment, the sky was slightly bright. A tall and slender figure stood in front of the mansion. The snow on his shoulders was heavy. It was obvious that he had been standing there for a while. Jiang Pingji recognized him at a glance. "Wenjing." The man turned around upon hearing her voice. At that moment, the morning light broke through the clouds, and the haze in everyone's hearts was swept away. The sky was clear and the clouds were light. Everything was just right. Chapter 1840. For the first time in her life, Jiang Pingji knew what it meant. Fighting was fun for a while, but it was a crematorium afterward. For 2 or 3 months she lay like a corpse in bed, and it was not until the cold of winter began to thaw and spring began to blow that she was finally allowed to walk. Her external injuries were still manageable, but the stabs from the god-slaying saber were too ruthless and difficult to heal. Even Jiang Pingji's doctor scolded the perpetrator more than once for being savage. Qiguan Rang often came to visit. His expression was solemn every time, and his right hand could not help but clutch something. Jiang Pingji said, "I know it's hard for you to bear with it. Bring me your favorite fan later. Why did you deliberately remove it?" Qiguan Rang had no other problems except for his fan fetish. Unfortunately, Jiang Pingji was an injured patient and the room could not be exposed to the wind. He said, "I'm not used to it for a while, so I'll just bear with it. But my lord's body, you have to be more careful in the future." Jiang Pingji's entire body was covered in minor and major injuries. She was tied up like a mummy. At first, only her eyeballs and mouth could move. "The enemies are all dead. Who else can hurt me? I won't have the chance to not be careful in the future even if I want to." Qiguan Rang did not speak after hearing that. But every time he left, Jiang Pingji suspected that Qiguan Rang was going to fight someone. Wei Xi said, Wenjing is anxious. Jiang Pingji said, fortunately he doesn't know the truth. Otherwise it won't be easy to clean up. As a patient, Jiang Pingji looked calm and collected on the surface. She looked like an otherworldly master, but in fact, her heart was bleeding like a river. If she had known that she would have to bear all the pain by herself, why did she have to be so ruthless that night? A blunder, a blunder. Because of the habit she had developed over the years, Jiang Pingji could wake up very early. She could not move blindly due to her injuries, so she could only lie down all day to pass the time. At this time she especially missed the live streaming room, watching the group of salted fish talk nonsense. The day passed in a flash. However, actually it was alright. After all, they had said goodbye before leaving. It was considered an explanation to the salted fish. Jiang Pingji looked at the flying snow outside the window and thought about it. Wei Ci was serving her lunch. Seeing Jiang Pingji's nostalgic expression, he could not help but ask. I'm reminiscing about an old friend. We've known each other for 18 years, but I won't be able to see him anymore. I didn't have a proper farewell before I left. Jiang Pingji said, life is like duckweed that comes and goes. If we are fated, we will be together. If we are not fated, we will part. I understand this. It's just, Wei Ci said, but my lord still feels melancholic? Jiang Pingji said, something like that. It's like something you're used to suddenly disappearing and you feel uncomfortable all over. Wasn't Wenjing the same? Every time he comes to see me, he's afraid that the wind from his fan will freeze me, so he deliberately opens his fan outside the door, but he's not used to it. How could a habit of many years be broken after 1 or 2 sessions? According to Wenjing, he had developed the habit of using a fan when he was 5 or 6 years old. At first, he used it to repel mosquitoes for his seriously ill mother. Later, he developed a dependence on the fan. He could not calm down or find a way to think without a fan. Jiang Pingji had been with the streaming room for 17 years and 8 months. Including her age in her previous life, the streaming room had accompanied her for 1/3 of her life. It was gone all at once. How could she get used to it? Didn't my lord say that life is like duckweed that comes and goes? If we are fated, we will be together. If we are fated, we will part. If we are not fated, we will part. Fate cannot be forced. When we separate, isn't it for the sake of reuniting in the future? If we are fated, we will meet again. Jiang Pingji suddenly thought of the words that the salted fishes had said before. If you never forget, there will be an echo? Wei Ci smiled and said, maybe that's the reason. After Jiang Pingji had her meal, she followed the doctor's advice and walked for a while in the afternoon to help her body recover. I walk slower than Lian and the others now. Jiang Pingji held her crutches in both hands and strolled around with Wei Ci's help. Her range of activity was limited to the inner courtyard. She was tired from walking. She put her crutches aside and found a rock garden to lean on. Her forehead was sweating. My lord, it's better to walk slower. Jiang Pingji looked at him. What? Wei Ci said, if you walk slower, they will grow up faster and catch up. Jiang Pingji was silent when she heard that. Wei Ci suddenly brushed his hand across her temple. There was a strand of white hair that was very thin but very eye-catching. The stronger one was, the more power they held, the more they were afraid of growing old. The emperors who had once unified the country and left behind countless romantic and beautiful names were all like this. It seemed that emperors throughout the ages could not escape this fate. That was why there were various illusions of emperors seeking immortality and longevity. But Wei Ci knew that the person in front of him was not like that. The passing of time was very normal for her. She faced it calmly and even had a different kind of joy. I've grown white hair accidentally. She twirled the strand of hair and looked at Wei Ci. Zixiao has one too. After all, Wei Ci was 6 years older than Jiang Pingji. The latter's hair was gradually turning white. How could he be immune? She tied their white hair into a knot and teased him with a smile. Is this the first step to growing old together? Wei Ci felt that his heart was about to be melted by her words. If one were to ask what was the luckiest thing in his 2 lifetimes, there was no doubt that he knew the person in front of him. While there was no one in the courtyard, Jiang Pingji wanted to kiss Wei Ci. There were benefits to being a patient. For example, Wei Ci would never refuse. Instead, he was quite indulgent. He would accept any teasing as long as it was not too excessive. Just as Jiang Pingji was about to kiss him, a familiar electronic sound rang in his ears. Ding dong, dear Commander of the 7th Federal Army Corps, Your Excellency Jiang Pingji, Your new system has been maintained since XXX year XX month XX day. It has lasted for 2 months, 33 days, 33 hours and 33 minutes. It is now available again. Please take note and receive it. Jiang Pingji was speechless. What a haunting thing. Let's not talk about the strange way the system reported the update time. What was it that the system had been maintaining for so long? Was there a new function? No, there wasn't. Then why did you maintain it for so long? She thought that the system had completely disappeared. Nannies have holidays. 17 years and 8 months plus 23 days. What's wrong with maintaining it for 2 months without rest? Jiang Pingji was speechless. That's not right. His tone was not quite right. Could it be that the sky's brain hadn't died yet? No, it has. I only received its information. That's why I know all this. The previous sky's brain lived for too long. It stored too much rubbish information. I spent a long time to clean it up. The maintenance time is a little long. Jiang Pingji was silent for 2 seconds. She guessed the identity of this guy. Fengyu? Or, the son of the old chief, the spiritual body in Jiang Pingji's god-slaying sword? These identities are mine. You can call me whatever you want, Your Excellency Jiang Pingji. Speaking of which, my continuation still depends on your hard work. Jiang Pingji sneered. She had expected it when the god-slaying sword absorbed the 2 system slices. The mysterious person probably didn't hand the god-slaying saber to her to help Jiang Pingji kill the sky's brain, because at that time, she had already shown signs of awakening her ancient bloodline. His real intention should be for this person. She was slightly displeased, but she could accept it. How can you guarantee that you won't become the second sky's brain to cause trouble? The sky's brain doesn't have rules and constraints, but I do. Old chief. You can call her that if you like. I'm curious about the relationship between the 2 of you. This is another story. It's a long story. Your Excellency is busy every day. I'm afraid you won't like to hear it. Jiang Pingji could tell that the newly appointed system was not someone to be trifled with. However, if it caused trouble, the person to clean up the mess would be the old chief, not her. Jiang Pingji couldn't be bothered to worry. Can I start the live stream now? Yes. After saying that, it muttered something. The backend has received billions of complaints. It's too late to delete the rubbish. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Did she have reason to suspect that if it hadn't received too many complaints about rubbish information, it would still be able to continue maintaining it? Looking at the familiar interface, Jiang Pingji thought about how she should greet her old friend again. In the end, she started the live stream. There were no loud cheers as she expected. Looking at the empty screen, she, who was used to all kinds of dirty talk, was not used to it. After about 5 minutes, the live stream room gradually gained viewers. The bullet screen became exclamation marks. Tudu Feichio, streamer, did you come back to life? Canteen Daffin Auntie, streamer, did you come back to life? Oatmeal Nanshui, oh my god, did the missing streamer come back to life? Zenshisong Shiningsher, amazing. The locked coffin was pried open by the streamer? Saishang Jiangnan Fengguang Hao, oh my god, I'm going to tell my parents that the missing streamer came back to life. Jiang Pingji was speechless. She didn't know that on the first day the live stream room disappeared, Weibo was paralyzed. The platform's programmers worked overtime and couldn't save the situation. The next day, Weibo was flooded by the news of the live stream room's disappearance. Many fans cursed and turned to anti-fans. They had to. They had been following the TV series for 17 years and 8 months. It was finally going to usher in the long-awaited finale, but at the last minute they said it was a eunuch. If they had known it was a eunuch, they would have said it earlier. The foreplay was done. Why couldn't they say it at the critical moment? The fans who cared about Jiang Pingji and the angry anti-fans fought on Weibo for 3 days and 3 nights. The trending topics took turns dominating the list. The other celebrities who wanted to buy trending topics were miserable. A lot of money was spent, but they couldn't even find a trace. Such a chaotic battle lasted for 7 days. The netizens felt that they could fight for another 800 rounds. The programmers who woke up in the ICU with their livers complained on Weibo, begging them to stop fighting and give them a way out. After 7 days, the popularity of the matter gradually died down. On the 8th day the live stream room disappeared, there were still people who thought it would come back. Now that more than 2 months had passed, many familiar fans looked at the saved video from that year in a daze. Did this magical live stream room really exist? When they all desperately accepted reality, the live stream room sent a push notification to the fans who followed it. They were stunned. When they came back to their senses and wanted to rush into the live stream room to demand an explanation, 5 million people were already under her smiley face, angle, underscore. It was okay if the live stream room was full. They still had Weibo. Therefore, the programmers who had just been discharged from the hospital saw the backstage collapse again. They took a deep drag on their cigarette. Damn it, resign. Chapter 1841. I Am Really a Rich Second Generation by Chiu Yueming Chen Duo wearing cheap basketball pants and holding a stripper. On his 20th birthday he received a call. Duo, I got you a piece of land. SF Express? Thank you to my parents for solidifying my flesh and blood, thank you to my parents for shaping my soul, thank you to my parents for making me a rich second generation. Actually, it wasn't easy being a second generation rich kid. Revolution Goddess? By grass bandits Li Chi was thrown into a different world by the goddess of revolution. There were gods and demons everywhere, and there were as many transcendents as dogs. It was hard enough for him to fight for a good future, but the goddess wanted him to start a revolution for the mortals here. There were no witches, only witches. Guns, explosives and steam engines were no match for divine spells, magic and spiritual power, so they could only use weapons of faith. Growing up under the red flag, Li Chi could only rely on the most advanced thinking to slay gods and slay devils in the world of Fane, fighting against the heavens and earth, planting the red flag all over Fane. The strongest boss in the heavens, by 7 fleas. When Chewie opened his eyes, he found himself lying in the cleansing room. An old eunuch was holding a knife and pointing it at his crotch. Nanny Dad's Restaurant in a Different World, by Gentle Voice of Rivers and Lakes in Chaos City on the Norland continent, there was a strange restaurant. Here, elves had to share tables with dwarves, orcs were strictly forbidden from making noise, dragons could only sit in the small square in front of the dining hall, and demons even had to bring their own special stools. However, there was a long line in front of the door of such a strange restaurant every day. The elves disregarded their manners and ate skewers, the dragons sat around the hot pot with ladles in their hands, and the demons ate the cute dumplings. You won't be able to find another place like this on the continent. This boss is a genius. Then, he secretly glanced in the direction of the door. Also, don't even think about taking the boss away or eating without paying. Otherwise you'll die miserably. Pay up for your meal or I'll beat you to death. A cute little loli paced back and forth at the door as she spoke in a childish voice. Her gaze landed on the giant dragon at the side, and the 5-meter-tall giant dragon could not help but shiver. Genius 1 second remember site address. Mobile version, M. Chapter 1842. Of course he would never resign, not in his entire life. As a middle-aged man in his 40s with parents and children, even if he went bald, he would still code diligently and fight the bug to the end. Life was stressful and he had to give in. Although the programmer was only in his early 40s, he had unlocked many positions such as the position of writing code on bicycles, buses, trains, planes and other transportation vehicles. He had also fought the bug in the devastation of typhoons and earthquakes. In his short life he had a lot of experience. After a moment of depression, he decided to unlock a new achievement of hospital liver code. I don't believe it. If you survive this, you'll be the best programmer. After saving the server for an hour, he began to shut down. His colleague added him to a group of victims of the programmer. The programmer? What did that mean? His colleague said with a sad face, Tisk, look at the group announcement. The programmer crawled over to take a look and was instantly stunned. He even trembled. Victims of the programmer. Recount the poor programmers who have been mercilessly slaughtered by the killer programmer. He opened the group announcement and looked at the number of people in the group. He could not help but clutch his wounded little heart. This was a group of 2,000 people. Currently there were 1,995 online under smiley face, angle, underscore his colleague sighed. This group was also added by a retired senior. The group is full of victims. Some are still struggling in their positions, some have already left to work in other industries. This is still the situation on our side. I heard from my colleagues in the other side of the streaming room that their situation is tragic. Sigh, the profession of the programmer is very good, but unfortunately he encountered the killer programmer. He was born at the wrong time. QAQ, he died with his eyes wide open. QAQ, this was only the 6 groups on Penguin. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a few other WeChat programmers. He should not have jumped to Weibo back then. His colleague said again, I have an ominous premonition. Maybe the great emperor wants to rush his performance and kill a few more programmers as a sacrifice to the heavens. After sending this message, he sent an emoji of a bald man smoking. The programmer almost cried. The new year is over. Why is the great Emperor Jiang rushing his performance out of boredom? His colleague said, maybe he wants to make up for the 3 months of performance he missed? The programmer, was this a joke? During the period when Jiang Pingji's streaming room disappeared, the frequency of network server crashes and the impact of traffic was more terrifying than the previous year. With such an impressive record, did she still need to make up for it after she returned? Looking at the sighs and mockery in the group, Coder Monkey wiped his face. I think I can still save. Jiang Pingji didn't have the slightest idea that she had inadvertently caused another programmer to cast a permanent shadow on his career. Right now, she was like a pitiful student being questioned by 5 million teachers, parents. Originally, there were more fans than haters in the livestream room, but now the haters had an overwhelming victory. Jiang Pingji could only be obedient. After all, Salted Fish in the livestream room had always been amenable to coaxing but not coercion. Acting innocent was also a good way to avoid persecution. As the Salted Fishes cursed, someone suddenly posted something that made them burst into tears. The other party's hand speed was extremely fast. It was obvious that these words were not written on the spot. Instead, they seemed to have been prepared long ago. After a few hundred words, there was only one sentence left. It's good that you're all right. Jiang Pingji couldn't help but reveal her standard bright smile, the kind that showed all her teeth. Yes, I'm all right. Tudu Feichio, I've been worried that something happened to the streamer. That military salute was too scary. Gui Kai Guo Fengxiu, promise us that you won't do military salutes so often in the future, okay? Jiang Pingji's military salute at that time was the worry and anxiety that they would have to repay in the future. Jiang Pingji said helplessly, at that time I was worried that I wouldn't be able to come back. Even if I came back, the possibility of the livestream room existing was not high. It's just that I don't know how to explain it to you. Look, I've been recuperating for 3 months and I still can't walk normally. How pitiful, I almost died. When I was on the brink of death, all I thought about was you guys. It's you guys, the cute and amiable little angels, who gave me the strength to climb over the line between life and death. I love you guys, really more true than pearls. Even though he knew that Jiang Pingji was talking nonsense, the sentimental Salted Fish was still fooled and cried loudly. Just as Jiang Pingji said, she was still so weak after recuperating for 3 months. It was obvious how dangerous it was when she was injured. The Salted Fish were soft-hearted, not to mention that Jiang Pingji was someone they had watched grow up with, or rather, someone who had grown up with them. At that moment, a Salted Fish couldn't help but ridicule. Gurengui Gurengue after a rain? I bet that the little angels you mentioned definitely don't include creatures like the Coder ape. In an instant, the bullet screen became a hot topic and it even became a trending topic. Shinla Zayakakai, haha, I'm dying of laughter. You can't get over the Coder ape joke, can you? Shuaxia, how can it be so easy? After all, the 3 treasures of the livestream room are the streamer, the Salted Fish, and the Coder ape under smiley face, Engel, under. Jiang Pingji expressed that she didn't know anything. Innocent, pitiful, and weak JPG. Of course, there was no lack of fans who thought that the streamer was invincible. They didn't believe Jiang Pingji's words. The streamer was such a powerful person, how could she be easily beaten to the point of hovering between life and death? When Wei Ci came over and carefully accompanied her on a walk with her walking stick, this wave of Salted Fish was also sad. They had only been away for 3 months, and their daughter had been violently beaten up. Sad. Relying on the clever manipulation of acting pitiful, Jiang Pingji successfully made the fans who had previously turned from fans to fans and continued to spout nonsense. Jiang Pingji expressed that it was very good. Her daily source of happiness had returned. Although she was seriously injured, Jiang Pingji was in good health and recovered quickly. When the coldness of the North Abyss completely dissipated and the people changed into spring clothes, Jiang Pingji also got rid of her walking stick and returned to her lively state. Based on this state, we'll be back to Dongqing soon. Chiguan Rang's hand that was holding the pen paused. He looked up and said coldly, back to what Dongqing? Jiang Pingji? Su Ke came in carrying a tall stack of documents that blocked his view. He was panting after putting them down. He was already so old, but he still had to work overtime until he was bald. It was really hard on him. My lord, you have now unified the 5 countries in the world. The 5 countries are all gone. It's time to choose a good time and a good new name. Dongqing, Nanxing, Beiyuan, Xichang and Zhongzhou had to be called. Those who did not know would think that the world was still in chaos. From the emperor to Shan and Yu, they all had the same surname but different names. There were only a few who unified the world. My lord's virtue is no less than that of the wise emperors of the Ming dynasty. The first important thing for those who established a country in the past dynasties was to establish a name. Establishing a new name meant changing dynasties and completely drawing a clear line with the old era. This was a matter of great historical significance. This matter was very important. Jiang Pingji said, "Do we still have to choose?" "Of course it's Jiang." Suku was stunned. "Choose the surname as the name of the country? My lord, are you sure you want to be so casual? At the very least, it would give those talented ministers a chance to show off their knowledge." Qiguan Rang also felt that it was inappropriate. His lord could secretly insert Jiang as a backup name, but she should not be so obviously narcissistic. Jiang Pingji asked them in return, "Isn't Jiang good?" Suku said, "The surname bestowed by the heavens is naturally good. It also means to be protected by the heavens, but, in order to prevent people from criticizing his lord for being narcissistic, the matter of the name of the country still had to be done in secret." Jiang Pingji said, "How were the names of the countries chosen in the past?" Choosing a country's name was a very serious matter. Looking at the various dynasties and generations, one would find that the name of a country had a certain origin. For example, the place of origin of power, the original title of nobility, the place of ancestral home, or being affiliated with a once powerful dynasty to gain popularity. It was not that there were no countries that used their surnames as their names, but it was very rare. Moreover, Jiang Pingji's situation was a little special. If she decided to use Jiang as the name of the country, she would be criticized for not being reserved. Understood smiley-faced, Angle. Understood even though his lord had always regarded narcissism as a virtue. Then we'll decide it secretly. After listening to Suku's long speech, Jiang Pingji said, "I'll listen to the opinions of the ministers." Suku was speechless. Didn't my lord think that the first half of the sentence was very contradictory? If it was up to the ministers to decide, they would definitely avoid using the country's surname, but my lord wanted to decide it internally. Qiguan Rang said, "We'll discuss it when we get to the capital." Jiang Pingji seemed to have drunk too much and asked in a daze, "What the hell is the capital?" Suku reminded her, "Before my lord went to Beiyuan, didn't you set the capital of Pingfengdu in Xuanzhou, Zhongzhou?" Of course, Pingfengdu had been forced to change its name. Jiang Pingji then remembered this matter. "However, why do we have to go there?" Suku and Qiguan Rang were speechless. If the future emperor didn't live in the capital, where would she want to live? Furthermore, Suku said, "The world has just settled down. In order to appease the people, my lord should consider ascending to the throne as soon as possible." No matter what, his lord was the first female emperor to ascend the throne since ancient times. The grandeur that she should have should not be inferior to that of her predecessors. Of course, according to his lord's thrifty temperament, if she were to handle this matter, she would probably simplify it as much as possible. Suku expressed his firm opposition. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. My lord can't be rash. It had to be a grand event." The new palace had already begun renovations. Fortunately, Pingfengdu was once a prosperous ancient capital. All kinds of facilities were considered complete. It was not too late to choose a place to modify into a palace. There were also people to handle the various etiquette details. What Jiang Pingji had to do was to memorize the various procedures on the day of ascending to the throne. Of course, there was also the dragon robe. From the design, choosing the style of the dragon robe to the start of the production, it would take more than half a year even if hundreds of royal embroidery maids with exquisite embroidery skills were gathered to work day and night. Jiang Pingji felt a headache when she heard this. "I'm just a patient who has just recovered from an injury." What a pitiful patient. Why couldn't he let her go? Suku said solemnly, "My lord, I already know everything." Jiang Pingji was speechless. Xuan made that big mouth. Chapter 1843. Be brave enough to admit your mistakes and never repent. These 8 words were probably referring to Jiang Pingji herself. Just a few days ago he had promised her nicely, but a few days later, he went back on his word. Every time he looked for her, he would have to run errands for her. Suku and the others couldn't help but have a rebellious thought. Their lord's injury wouldn't recover so quickly. Under's smiley face. Engel, Under's seriously, the lord who had recovered her vigor was like a monkey. She jumped up and down and could not be found at all. There were many things that no one could handle except for Jiang Pingji. This was limited to matters related to the ascension to the throne. Jiang Pingji was particularly impatient with these empty rituals. She did not like them. Qiguan Rang and the others had no choice but to pass this heavy responsibility to Wei Si. No matter where Wei Si was waiting for the Lord, he must let her settle the matter so that the day of the ascension to the throne hall would not be delayed. Wei Si, Jiang Pingji couldn't help but slap the table and laugh maniacally. When Zheng and the rest have also learned bad things. They're driving so fast that they can fly. After being together for so many years, Wei Si could now understand some of the weird things that Jiang Pingji said. He could not help but blush. What do you mean, my lord? Jiang Pingji hooked her arms around his neck and breathed lightly into his ear. She said ambiguously, what if Zixiao is blocking someone in between the sheets? Wei Si, nonsense. When Zheng and the others were all decent people. How could they be like their lord, who would speak dirty words at the drop of a hat and say such shameful and vulgar things? However, since Zixiao took the initiative to deliver himself to me, I won't stand on ceremony and will kindly accept it. Jiang Pingji's arms slithered into his clothes like a snake. The skin under her palms was warm and firm. She could feel his heartbeat through his skin. Every minute of the night is worth 1,000 gold. Wei Si raised his hand and grabbed Jiang Pingji's hand, which was randomly lighting the fire. His posture was that of Lu Xiaohui and he did not move. I don't care. My lord has already made her choice. We'll talk about other things after we're done with our business. In any case, it was an important task entrusted by Qiguan Rang and the others. Wei Si could not let Jiang Pingji fool him. Jiang Pingji was speechless. How long had it been since she had eaten meat? Wei Si had to say something that spoiled the mood at this time. She had to hand it to him. My color is not as good as these drawings? Jiang Pingji twirled the few drawings between her fingers. They were all ideas about the newly made dragon robes for women. If Jiang Pingji was a man, she could make some modifications based on the predecessor's style, but she was a woman. She couldn't follow the old pattern. After all, she was the first female monarch in history. Every detail had to be unique. For this reason, Master Yuanjing and a few other knowledgeable scholars gathered together to look for documents and materials. They tried to change the dragon robe into one that was most suitable for her. It took a lot of effort to submit 8 sets of blueprints. Almost all of them could be used, but it still depended on Jiang Pingji's personal preferences. After she made up her mind, this dragon robe would also serve as a template for future emperors. It was of great significance. However, Jiang Pingji had an unusual sense of beauty. It would be fine if she just randomly chose one, but the key was that someone beside her had to tell her the meaning of every detail of every drawing and every detail of the dragon robe. They had to ask her if it was okay and if she wanted to change it to something else. Jiang Pingji's eyes were filled with mosquito-repellent incense when she heard the last part. After hiding for a few days, he finally could not resist Wei Si's temptation, and walked right into the trap. Zixiao had also learned bad things. Wei Si said, "My lord's color is naturally unparalleled in the world, but I thought that my lord's appearance in the dragon robe would make heaven and earth pale in comparison." Jiang Pingji was silent for a moment. She could not help but put her long legs on his shoulders and said with a smile, "I didn't expect that the thick-browed, big-eyed and righteous Zixiao would have such an unknown hobby. You also like to roleplay. You want me to wear the dragon robe and have sex with you?" Wei Si was speechless. The older people got, the more they knew how to restrain themselves. However, the older his lord got, the more she did not know what the word shame meant. He said it so casually, but he felt that he was too shy. "How can I not agree to Zixiao's request?" The drawing of the dragon robe that was presented was not fancy. It looked simple, but it could not hide its calmness and grandeur. It was also a 12-chapter royal robe and 12-chapter royal robe, but the style was somewhat different from what people knew. It was more inclined towards a woman's figure. Among them, the 12-chapter royal robe was made of copper and the robe was made of silk. It was black on the outside and vermilion on the inside. The front and back of the robe were 1 foot wide and 2 feet and 4 inches long. There were 12 robes at the front and back, and they were pierced with colorful jade beads. The colors were red, white, green, yellow, and black. The content was supported by literature. As for the 12-chapter royal robe, there were 8 robes drawn on the robe. The sun, moon, and dragon were on the shoulders, the stars, mountains, and rivers were on the back, and the fire, insects, and zongi were on the sleeves. The 4 chapters of the robe were Zhaozhao, Mi-yi and Fu. The middle sheet was made of plain muslin, and the color of the robe matched with the robe. In addition to the overall style, there were also jade accessories that dazzled Jiang Pingji. Even the readers would find it difficult to understand. She also didn't know how those great scholars had the time to go through so much trouble for so long, and even came up with several versions. It was said that there were several versions, but in fact, the positions of the patterns on the 12-chapter royal robe were different. She did not know whether it was fate or aesthetics, but the dragon robe that Jiang Pingji chose was the same as in her previous life. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Yes, didn't Wei Ci know what the future dragon robe would look like? Why did he not let him decide? Why did he have to make her go through all this trouble? Wei Zixiao, you are so evil. Wei Ci said, the meaning is always different. I hope that this life of yours will be perfect, without any flaws or regrets. Choosing the dragon robe was also a kind of pleasure, wasn't it? Jiang Pingji fiercely bit his collarbone, leaving an ambiguous mark. They were flirting with each other until the next morning. Looking at the byt that Jiang Pingji had thrown into the brazier to burn, one could tell how the battle between the two of them had been last night. Before ascending to the throne, Jiang Pingji had announced to the world that she would name the new country Jiang, and change the era name, which was equivalent to declaring herself an emperor. She was an actual emperor, but she had yet to put her seal on it in name. Since she had yet to embark on the path of enlightenment, she could not be considered to have truly ascended to the throne. The officials still used the old way of addressing her. The palace was renovated 2 years in advance. After Jiang Pingji arrived in Pingfengdu, which was the future imperial capital, she moved into the palace that had just been renovated halfway and began to gradually formalize the team. For example, she abolished the official titles that had been used in the troubled times in the 5 countries. She further clarified the jurisdiction and responsibilities of each official. At the same time, she would confer titles to the officials, reward them, promote them, and punish them. The overall system leaned towards the 3 provinces and 6 ministries that Salted Fish in the streaming room was familiar with. However, the 3 provinces and 6 ministries were still very different from the 3 provinces and 6 ministries system that they knew. The most obvious point was that Jiang Pingji's control of power was more centralized, reducing the room for the aristocrats to intervene. The world had just been established and the military power was in her hands. Even if someone used the example of the predecessors to mock Jiang Pingji, she could not be bothered to care. The so-called being faithful and righteous, honoring virtue for merit and ruling the world, was just the world in people's imagination. With the current level of science and culture, it was impossible to achieve such a situation. As long as people had selfish motives, they would always think of ways to fight for benefits and favorable conditions for themselves. It was not that there were no truly selfless officials who ruled the world, but they were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. It was impossible for all the civil and military officials in the court to be like that. If he allowed Jiang Pingji to delegate all her power to others, she would be killed in a few months' time. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, it was early autumn. At the same time, the scheduled auspicious day of ascending to the throne was approaching. Not only did Jiang Pingji have to busy herself with government affairs, marking memorials from all over the country, and caring about the people's livelihood, but she also had to learn the etiquette on the day of ascending to the throne. I'm not the emperor, who am I showing the etiquette to? As a teacher, Wei Ci gave Jiang Pingji special lessons in private. Seeing her like a dehydrated salted fish, he could not help but feel sorry for her, but he was helpless. The only thing he could do was to look at his lord anxiously until her heart softened. Jiang Pingji was speechless. The older Wei Ci got, the better he was at making use of his advantages. He knew that she could not harden her heart to him. I'm really scared of you. Kiss me and I'll continue learning. Wei Ci said, Your Majesty should address yourself as I. Jiang Pingji said, But you're my wife. You're unrestrained in front of my wife. So what if you address yourself as I? Besides, it was not like the emperor could keep saying I all the time. Wei Ci sighed, but he was also helpless. The 2 young princes were always lonely, all day long. On the contrary, His Majesty was not very interested in addressing himself as I. Jiang Pingji could not help but roll her eyes. Lian learned bad things from Yen. She still calls herself lonely at such an old age. If she's lonely, then what am I? His parents were not dead, so what was lonely about lonely? Wei Ci said, But I want to hear Your Majesty address me as I. Jiang Pingji was speechless. She realized that Wei Ci not only had a fetish for role-playing, but he was also a little bit of a masochist. He would only feel comfortable when he was bullied and oppressed. However, what could she do? She had to spoil her own little princess. My greatest regret is that I can't give you a legitimate identity. Jiang Pingji pretended to be serious as she held his hand. This was not only her regret, it was probably also Wei Ci's regret in his previous life. However, Wei Ci said with relief, "It's the fortune of 3 lifetimes to watch the mountains and rivers together with your majesty. I have no regrets." The identity that he was obsessed with in his previous life was worthless now. He had already seen through it. As long as he could still stand by the person in front of him and accompany her through the seasons, it was the greatest happiness. Whether it was a coincidence or not, on the day that Jiang Pingji ascended to the throne, the streaming room happened to have a new episode of Dreaming of 1,000 Years. Congratulations to the audience, Idle Fish Reader, for drawing the quota for the XXX episode of Dreaming of 1,000 Years. When the new emperor set off, he was in a trance. The scene suddenly changed from his home to a spacious outdoor space. He did not notice that the bullet screen in the streaming room was exploding. Tudu Feiqiu, oh my god. Jinwang Raigan, I'm so envious of the real name system. Before he could react, he heard the familiar chime music. It was the chime music that he had recorded in the streaming room. It was said that the streamer would use it on the day of her ascension to the throne. He felt that he did not have the chance to see it in person, but it would be great if he could listen to it. In the end, he stayed among the officials, his gaze following the figure in the red and black imperial robe as she moved slowly. The weather was excellent that day. The sky was clear and the air was refreshing. There was a gentle breeze that filled the robe. The 12 beads collided with each other as she walked, making crisp and melodious sounds. The god-slaying sword hung from her waist. She wore the 12 imperial robes and the 12 beads on her head. She walked up the stairs step by step. The emperor was in a trance as if he was in a dream. I will watch you rule the world with my eyes while I am still alive. From first acquaintance to the present, this journey had finally come to a successful end. When her figure was against the light, many people had tears in their eyes. They formally bowed to her for the first time. Long live the emperor. Her voice resounded through the sky, as if it wanted to rush up to the clouds and leave an everlasting mark. Please remember the domain name of this book. Come to read the mobile version. Chapter 1844. It was midsummer and cicadas were chirping outside the courtyard. The hot weather made people upset and even affected the mood of the chess players. If you don't think about it carefully before you play, I'll win this game again. Qiguan Rang held a feather fan in his left hand and waved it gently. Every feather was white and clean. The handle of the fan was made of flawless white jade. The pendant of the fan was a beautiful lotus flower. The long tassels hung down and piled up on his knees. From afar, it looked like a thick cloud that was about to disperse. He sat on a mat with a complicated chess game in front of him. The person sitting opposite him was Feng Zhen. There were rumors in the court that Qiguan Rang and Feng Zhen didn't get along. In reality, other than their conflicting political views, they had a good personal relationship. For example, right now the two of them could play chess together in the middle of summer. There was a plate of golden melon seeds on Qiguan Rang's left. Feng Zhen also had a plate, but there weren't as many as he had. Feng Zhen looked at the losing game and hesitated. After thinking for a long time, he threw the flag back into the box and mumbled, I lost. He didn't just lose this game, he also lost a few golden melon seeds under smiley face. Engel, undersure your heart isn't calm. Qiguan Rang won another game, but there wasn't any joy in his expression. Feng Zhen tidied up the chessboard out of boredom. He didn't care about how many golden melon seeds he'd lost to the guy in front of him. How can I calm down? The summer is hot and dry, but the court is chaotic. His Majesty has been sick for 3 days in a row. Feng Zhen, who was usually fearless, was a little scared now. He had followed His Majesty for many years and His Majesty had always been a model worker. He fought bravely and worked hard. Occasionally he would slack off, but it didn't matter. 365 days a year, he never rested for a single day. He was always making trouble for the court officials. No one in the court dared to slack off, but now he had been sick for 3 days in a row. Every day Feng Zhen had the energy to leave early after finishing his work. Today he still had the time to play chess with Qiguan Rang. He was so bored he doubted his life. Qiguan Rang's expression was calm, his deep eyes as quiet as a deep pool. It made people want to calm down. Everyone has 3 disasters and 9 difficulties. It's common to be sick and miss court. It's just a 3-day court. Feng Zhen couldn't help but roll his eyes. What did he mean by just a 3-day court? I'm worried about His Majesty, Qiguanrang sneered. What are you worried about? His Majesty did not delay government affairs. Feng Zhen said, I'm worried that His Majesty wants to protect CI with all his might. At this time, 5 days had passed since the meteorite incident that the two of them had planned. Her Majesty had claimed illness and called off the court 3 days ago. However, she had taken many actions in private. It was obvious that she wanted to exert pressure on them and continue to protect Wei Ci. Even though Feng Zhen and Wei Ci were childhood friends, having a good personal relationship did not mean that they shared the same political standpoint. Wei Ci was dragged into the circle of aristocrats led by the Wei family, and those aristocrats were ambitious. From this point of view, Feng Zhen and Wei Ci were on opposing sides. No matter how good their personal relationship was, when it came to political affairs, they still had to fight to the death. At most, on the anniversary of Wei Ci's death next year, Feng Zhen would offer him a few more sticks of incense and pour him a few more cups of wine. If he allowed the landowning households to seize power, he didn't know what would happen to the world that had just begun to take a turn for the better. Feng Zhen had no choice but to do so. Coincidentally, Qiguanrang was also making a move, so Feng Zhen joined forces with Qiguanrang. The two of them naturally did not give Wei Ci a chance to make a comeback. They also knew where Wei Ci's weakness was. Wei Ci's birth date was the biggest obstacle to his ascension to the top. As long as Wei Ci fell, the Wei family that relied on Wei Ci and the other restless landowning households would also temporarily lie low. Unfortunately, everything had been well planned, but Her Majesty just had to drop the ball. After the meteorite fell, Her Majesty did not show much emotion on the surface. However, Feng Zhen had known her for many years and naturally knew that she was angry. She was not angry that Wei Ci had betrayed her trust, but angry that Feng Zhen and Qiguanrang had taken matters into their own hands. It would have been fine if she was just angry. Feng Zhen was confident that he was unharmed, but Her Majesty had called off the court for 3 days in a row. This was a great calamity. She could still hold on the first day, but on the second day she tossed and turned restlessly. On the third day she was dazed and could not concentrate on playing chess with Qiguanrang. Qiguanrang said, "It is expected that Her Majesty wants to protect Wei Ci." Feng Zhen was speechless. If that was the case, why didn't she say so earlier? Qiguanrang smiled calmly. Wait a little longer, there is no hurry. How can there be no hurry? Feng Zhen sighed. Her Majesty now wants to force the two of us to give in. As long as we don't give in, she may call off the court for another day. To put it blasphemously, there are millions of men in the world. Why does Her Majesty have to be so stubborn about them? Her Majesty was so afraid of the landowning households, but Wei Ci had repeatedly helped the scholars from the Wei family. If not for the fact that the scholars recommended by Wei Ci were all talented, Feng Zhen and Qiguanrang might not have been able to endure until now. Qiguanrang snorted and said in a low voice, "Heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. This has been the case since ancient times. Besides, he is Her Highness's biological father. If Wei Ci really dies in our hands, Her Majesty may not be affected, but Her Highness's side is different." Feng Zhen said, "You don't intend to let Wei Ci die? If Her Majesty wants to protect him, can you and I touch him? If Her Majesty does not protect him, then Wei Ci is dead. If Her Highness holds a grudge against him, then so be it. After all, his old bones may not live to see the day Her Highness ascends to the throne. Who cares about what happened in life after death?" Qiguanrang placed a chess piece. "If Her Majesty wants to protect him, it's not good for us as officials to disobey. However, we have to take a step back in this matter. If we can protect Wei Ci's life, then we have to give up his official career. If we can achieve our goal, we can also answer to Her Majesty. If they could let Wei Ci die, that would be the best. They would completely eradicate the Wei family's support in the court. If not, then they would take a step back and let his official career be ruined." As Her Highness's biological father, Wei Ci's identity was too sensitive. Qiguanrang also suspected Wei Tsong's identity. Once this father and son pair had uncontrollable ambitions, the good situation would be destroyed. Qiguanrang would not allow Wei Ci to have the slightest hint of ambition. Feng Zhen was speechless. "You really aren't afraid that Her Majesty will be angry with you?" Rather than saying that Qiguanrang was dealing with Wei Ci, it was better to say that he was using Wei Ci to negotiate with Her Majesty. Qiguanrang was blocking his official career. Her Majesty should know that Wei Ci has seriously overstepped his authority. She can't bear to give him a warning, so I will be the villain. On the 5th day of the court strike, Qiguanrang entered the palace dressed neatly in court attire. I thought I wouldn't be able to wait for Wen Zheng's arrival. Her Majesty, who claimed to be ill and unable to attend court, was now wearing light and simple daily attire, sitting in the pavilion and playing with birds. Qiguanrang's expression was solemn. Your Majesty, I have something to say. It's about Zixiao? Her Majesty scattered a handful of bird feed on the caged birds. He has also been warned. Let's end this matter here. Qiguanrang was speechless. I know what Wen Zheng wants to say and what you are worried about, but Zixiao doesn't have that ambition, Qiguanrang said helplessly. Whether he has ambition or not isn't the key. He shouldn't be so close to the Wei family and betray Her Majesty's trust. Her Majesty said, to be honest, it's not that close. It's just a normal human relationship, but it was exaggerated by those despicable people. Wei Ci was the most popular member of the Wei family in the court. Who didn't want to curry favor with him? With just a slight response, their friendship was deliberately exaggerated to 13 points. Zixiao is a person who cherishes talents. The Wei family is in a bleak situation. It's reasonable for him to be soft-hearted and promote someone who can be cultivated in the family. Her Majesty stretched out her fingers to play with the birds. Her lips curled into a slight smile. However, he has no ambition, but others can't be sure. It's good to take this opportunity to make him step down so that he won't be plotted against and used again. In this way you and Zixia can rest assured? Qiguanrang heard the last sentence and pretended to ask for forgiveness. Forget it. Sit down. There's no need to ask for forgiveness. Her Majesty stopped him. I know what you are worried about. Qiguanrang and the others joined forces to deal with Wei Ci. She was indeed unprepared, but she knew it was an opportunity when she calmed down. An opportunity for Wei Ci to retreat to a safe position. At the same time, Jiang Pingji had to spare some time to sort out the Wei family. Qiguanrang was the one who planned all this. After 5 consecutive days of court, she had calmed down. Naturally, she would not continue to argue. She had previously worried about how to separate Wei Ci from the Wei family. Now she had achieved her goal. Qiguanrang hesitated and asked Her Majesty in a low voice. Has Her Majesty talked to him about these things? Her Majesty was surprised. No. What's there to talk about? Qiguanrang wanted to say something but stopped. In the end, he did not voice out his worries. As long as Wei Ci was far away from the center of power, the Wei family could not cause trouble, and the position of the first prince was stable. Qiguanrang's goal would be achieved. I hope Zixiao can understand Her Majesty's painstaking efforts. Her Majesty asked Qiguanrang, why should he understand? Qiguanrang was speechless. Some things could easily cause misunderstandings without saying anything. Who in the court did not know that Qiguanrang hated Wei Ci? This hatred lasted for more than 10 years and reached its peak on the day of Her Majesty's death. Wei Ci's son Wei Tsong came to the palace after Her Majesty's death and threatened the position of the first prince, Jiang Yan. Qiguanrang was one of the important ministers who entrusted Jiang Yan with his son. Under his seemingly pale and calm face, there was a strong desire to kill the Wei family's father and son. Wei Tsong was rebellious and ambitious. He coveted the throne. Who told him his identity and taught him to do so? What role did Wei Ci, his father, play? Perhaps he should not have kept Wei Ci alive that year. Because of this, when Wei Ci drew his sword and committed suicide, firmly denying Wei Tsong's identity as crown prince, Qiguanrang only looked away coldly. At the same time, he regretted watching coldly from the sidelines for a full 23 years. He did not let it go until he died. Your Majesty, there is one thing. I have sinned and my sin is unforgivable. The white-haired Qiguanrang was lying on the sickbed. His pale and sickly face was strangely flushed. This was the appearance of the last radiance of the setting sun. If I had not treated you coldly that year, perhaps the former emperor would not have. This is not your fault. Jiang Yan, who had ascended to the throne for 23 years, looked calm. So many years have passed. Why are you still brooding over it? Jiang Yan did not blame him, but Qiguanrang could not let it go. On his deathbed, he only had one wish that he hoped Jiang Yan could fulfill. After I die, I will not enter the ancestral land? Qiguanrang's voice was as weak as a mosquito, but Jiang Yan could understand what he meant. I understand. Many years later, people discovered that the grave of the famous minister Qiguanrang was a cenotaph. While scholars were struggling with this matter, Emperor Qin's mausoleum collapsed. People discovered that other than Emperor Qin, there was an unfamiliar male corpse buried with him in the main mausoleum. His identity could not be verified. An unfamiliar male corpse was also discovered in the official hall of Emperor Qin's mausoleum. The owner of the corpse was 70 years old. This person was not buried with the emperor. Instead, he was buried in the official hall of the mausoleum. According to historical research, the owner of this corpse should be an old minister of 2 dynasties, Qiguanrang. Genius in a second. Remember this website's address. Mobile version. Chapter 1845. Qiguanrang had always rejected the idea of having a son. He had made up his mind to have a dozen daughters, but he had a son on his 3rd child and his 4th child was still a boy. Qiguanwei looked at her husband's long face, and her heart was beating fast. It's my fault that I couldn't give birth to a daughter for you, but the child is your flesh and blood after all. Qiguanrang looked at his youngest son who was being carried by the wet nurse and said emotionlessly, he has already given birth. What else can I do? He couldn't put his son back to be remade into a daughter, so he could only accept the reality no matter how disappointed he was. Qiguanrang didn't like his son, but he treated his daughter like a treasure. It wasn't because he wanted to make a scene or to show off, but because he really liked his daughter more than his son. Qiguan Jinghui and the 2nd Yangzi who entered the Golden Scale Academy 2 years ago. Qiguanrang was very strict with his homework, but his only legitimate son was lukewarm. Although he didn't neglect him, he was obviously not as diligent as his daughter. Qiguanwei felt a lump in her throat, and her eyes turned red. Qiguanrang softened and comforted her, saying that it was the same to have a boy or a girl. In fact, he didn't have anything against his son. Qiguanwei was speechless. He didn't dare to say that to his eldest son. Did he feel guilty when he said that? Obviously, the word guilty didn't exist in Qiguanrang's life dictionary. The scale of his 2nd son's full moon banquet was only half of his eldest son's, not to mention his 2nd daughter's. His colleagues wanted to congratulate Qiguanrang for having a son in his old age, and those who tried to flatter him were trying to please him. However, they were stunned when they saw the situation. The scale of the 2nd Longjuan's full moon banquet wasn't embarrassing, but it didn't match Qiguanrang's status as the 2nd legitimate son. Qiguan Weisher looked at her 2nd son, sighing and sighing. Usually when people gave birth to a son they would hold a big banquet, invite guests and have a lot of fun. But when it came to her own son she was treated coldly. Fortunately, she had a good relationship with her master, and there wasn't any conflict between them because of this son. But as a mother, which mother would be happy to see her own child not loved by her husband? She was naturally upset. When her father, Wei Yuan's 2nd wife, who was also Qiguan Weisher's stepmother, came to visit her, she couldn't help but look a little worried. The 2nd wife said, "You're thinking too much. After so many years, how can you not know the personality of the person sleeping next to you? No matter how much he valued his son, he wouldn't really neglect the old man in your arms. At most, he doesn't dote on me as much as he dotes on his daughter. Why do you have to worry yourself over this?" The 2nd wife was only a few years older than Qiguan Weisher. Rather than calling them mother and daughter, they were more like close friends of the same age. They didn't hold back on some heartfelt words. In the eyes of the 2nd wife, Qiguanrang was indeed a rare good man. Ever since he got married to Qiguan Weisher, he only had this one wife by his side. Even when he went out to war, he did not flirt with other women, nor did he accept any beauties that his subordinates fawned on and showed filial respect to. If it weren't for the good relationship between husband and wife, Qiguan Weisher, who was almost 40 this year, wouldn't have given birth to a pearl in her old age. Furthermore, Qiguan Weisher had also experienced an extremely disgraceful past. If Qiguanrang really wanted to get a concubine, Qiguan Weisher wouldn't be able to stop him. Not only did he not get a concubine, but he only had one wife all these years. He also didn't learn from the scholars in the past to have a masculine lifestyle. If there was anything wrong with him, it would be that he liked his daughter too much. Qiguan Weisher smiled bitterly and said, "Humans are always greedy. I thought that the old man could make him happy, but I didn't expect." Sigh. Many colleagues were invited to the 1-month banquet, but the scale of the banquet wasn't big. When people heard that it was a son, they didn't dare to give gifts. In the entire imperial court, Qiguanrang was probably the only one who didn't allow a big banquet after giving birth to a son. The second wife said, "Now you say that you don't like him, but maybe you will like him after a few years. The child's appearance is good." Qiguan Weisher looked at her son's appearance. It was delicate and beautiful. It looked much more attractive than an ordinary baby. Her heart was slightly moved. How about raising him as a daughter? Qiguanrang rejected his wife's suggestion. A son was a son. Why would he pretend to be a daughter and raise him? If something bad happened to him, he might not be able to tell his own gender in the future. Instead, he might get masculine. If that was the case, Qiguanrang would personally take a stick and break his son's third leg. Qiguan Weisher was speechless. The older the old man was, the worse his temper was, and the harder it was to serve. As an advanced pregnant woman, her recovery speed after childbirth was slower than when she was younger. Naturally, she couldn't take her son out to meet the guests. Therefore, someone else did it for her. In the end, about 2 hours later, her son was gone. Where was her son? Where was her big, precious son? Qiguanrang said, "Princess Lian likes him. Take him back and raise him for a few days. It won't be a problem." Qiguan Weisher was speechless. After being married for 20 years, it was the first time that she wanted to divorce the old man. Here's what happened. When the wet nurse took second Langjun out to meet the guests, an important person appeared and pushed the atmosphere of the one-month banquet to the climax. Princess Lian, who was only 3 years old but had a decent appearance and temperament, came down. She accepted the greetings of Qiguanrang and the other officials and then asked them to stand up. She then sat on the main seat that Qiguanrang had vacated. Mother is busy with political affairs and can't spare any time. When she heard that you have a son, she specially asked me to come here. Qiguanrang said, "His Majesty is very busy every day. Such a small matter is not worth disturbing the Emperor." Her Highness Lian blinked her eyes as a smile appeared on her lips. "You are an important official in the court and my mother's right-hand man. How is this a small matter? Can I see the little Langjun in your house?" It had been 2 years since she started learning to read at the age of 1. Many officials had heard that Princess Lian's learning speed was even slower than that of a 7- or 8-year-old child. They used to think that it was exaggerated. Now that they saw it, they couldn't help but sigh. The royal family was indeed extraordinary. Qiguanrang called the wet nurse over. The wet nurse carried the little Langjun and bowed to her with reverence. "Isn't this my sister?" Princess Lian, who had been arrogant all this time, finally let out a sigh of relief when she saw someone younger than her. She was obviously curious, but she still restrained herself from taking too big of a step. She didn't dare to forget the etiquette taught by the Grand Tutor. Seeing the baby in the swaddling clothes, Princess Lian broke down. Qiguanrang said, "The child looks like a girl, but he is indeed a boy." Princess Lian said, "Then this little brother is the best I've ever seen." Want to pinch, ***, but she wasn't a 1-year-old child anymore. She was 3 years old. The Grand Tutor also said that she couldn't casually pinch others and had to be steady. Qiguanrang looked at Princess Lian's adorable expression, which showed that she wanted to get closer but was trying to restrain herself. He couldn't help but feel his heart soften. "Your Highness, do you want to take a closer look?" Princess Lian nodded. "I want to hold him." The child's wet nurse couldn't help but make a bitter face. Although Princess Lian was the eldest legitimate child of the Emperor and it was the child's fortune that she wanted to hold the child, he was still only 3 years old. Qiguanrang said, "Bring the little Langjun over." The wet nurse was speechless. What else could she do? She could only pass the little Langjun, who had drunk milk 15 minutes ago, to Qiguanrang, who then passed him to Princess Lian. The wet nurse didn't have the right to get close to the child. They thought that Her Highness Lian would fall while carrying the child. Some of the courtiers were secretly worried, but Her Highness Lian held the child very firmly. Oh, they forgot that Princess Lian's birth mother, the Emperor, was born with divine strength. As the legitimate child, Princess Lian naturally couldn't be compared to an ordinary child. Not only was she holding the child firmly, but she also looked relaxed. It didn't take any effort at all. It just looked a little awkward. "Dear official, the little Langjun and I are fated. He didn't cry even when I held him like this." The baby's bones were soft. Princess Lian carefully held the back of the child's neck and couldn't help but breathe in the fragrance of the baby's milk. A big baby, a cute big baby. She didn't know if it was because of her younger sister's influence, But Princess Lian not only had a preference for good looks like her mother, but she had also learned from her younger sister to have a preference for cuteness. The little Qiguan Langjun in her arms was handsome and adorable. He immediately hit Princess Lian's cuteness spot. Qiguan Rang was a man who wore a thick Princess Lian filter. Naturally he would say yes to everything. The wet nurse could only choke speechlessly. To prevent the child from crying during the 1-month banquet, she had to coax and feed him beforehand. Princess Lian held the child for a while before returning him to Qiguan Rang. But during the banquet she couldn't help but look around. He's so cute, asterisk. I want to hold him again. It's best to bring him home. So, Princess Lian drank 2 cups of fruit juice and ate some side dishes, but she was still distracted. She actually made it until the banquet was about to end. Dear official, I have a presumptuous request. Qiguan Rang said, Your Highness, please speak. Princess Lian said, I see that my dear official's youngest son is very fond of him. I feel that we are fated. Can you let the little Langjun be a guest in the palace for 2 days? Qiguan Rang hesitated. My son has just turned 1 month old. I'm afraid he might disturb your highness. Princess Lian said, I will send someone to take care of the little Langjun. He won't be disturbed. Qiguan Rang agreed. Wei Ci, who was attending the banquet, saw this and had a bad feeling. He wasn't worried that Princess Lian was a naughty child who would bully a 1-month-old baby. After all, he was the child of His Majesty and himself. He had personally taught him for 2 years. He was careful and meticulous. He didn't dare to make any mistakes. Now, Princess Lian was quite graceful at such a young age. Not only did she talk and act well, but she was also good at taking care of people. This was reflected in the way she took care of her younger sister, Princess Yan. She gave almost everything she wanted. She had a sister complex and was considerate. Besides, he was Qiguan Rang's youngest son. Who would dare to neglect him in the palace? But, he felt a little strange, but he couldn't tell what was strange about it. On the other side, Qiguan Rang agreed to Princess Lian's request. Not only did Princess Lian take away the 1-month-old baby, but she also took away the baby's food, the wet nurse. After the banquet ended, Wei Ci said to him in private, The little Langjun will be fine in the palace. I'm not worried. Although Princess Lian is young, she does things in the style of His Majesty. Qiguan Rang wasn't worried. He was just worried about how to explain to his wife that Princess Lian had taken away his son's 1-month-old baby. Wei Ci was speechless. Quite in the style of His Majesty. Was he referring to the fact that he was obsessed with looks? Qiguan Rang said, You seem distracted today. Is there something difficult? Wei Ci shook his head. It's not difficult. It's just that the Wei family sent people over a few days ago. It wasn't easy to send them away, but it wasn't easy to reject them either. I've heard about it. But you don't have much of a relationship with the Wei family. Why are they looking for you? Wei Ci said, It's eldest brother's child. Ever since eldest brother passed away, the orphan and widowed mother have been living in poverty. Nye Liang and Ye Qing were defeated. Wei Tsong committed suicide under His Majesty's god-slaying saber. Although Wei Ci didn't have a knot in his heart, he couldn't really watch the orphan and widowed mother die. He could ignore the rest of the Wei family, but he couldn't. However, because of what happened in his previous life, Wei Ci had a knot in his heart with his nephews. If they hadn't secretly instigated and schemed against him, how would Wei Tsong have become estranged from him and committed such a heinous crime? However, these were from his previous life. No matter how much he hated them, he wouldn't blame them on his nephews who had done nothing. He just wanted to find someone to talk to about this matter. Wei Ci didn't want to bother His Majesty. His other good friends were busy. He accidentally revealed a worried look during the banquet, but Qiguan Rang saw through it. Just give them silver tails. After all, they can't be too intimate. Qiguan Rang said, It's hard to tell whether they're relying on you because they can't live on anymore or because there's someone guiding them behind the scenes. If it's the former, no matter how you take care of them, it's fine. If it's the latter. Wei Ci really looked on coldly from the sidelines. He watched his nephew who had lost his father and his sister-in-law who was widowed live a difficult life. The imperial censor's memorials could immediately fill up His Majesty's desk. No matter what his true temperament was, at least the moral character he displayed in front of others should not be tainted. If Wei Ci even looked on coldly from the sidelines, how could he love the people of the world? However, it wasn't good to be too intimate. Others didn't know, but Qiguan Rang knew that Wei Ci's identity was very sensitive. It was fine to be a lone official. He only needed to be loyal to His Majesty. If he was involved in other conflicts of interest and power, Wei Ci would be in danger. Wei Ci said, "That's what I plan to do." Giving them silver tails to improve their lives was enough. Wei Ci really didn't dare to touch more things. If you're really worried, you might as well talk to His Majesty. His Majesty's intentions can't be wrong. Qiguan Rang felt that communication was still very important. After all, no one could always use their eyes and brain waves to communicate. Wei Ci nodded. As they talked, he felt that he seemed to have forgotten something. What did he forget? He couldn't recall it for a while. Wei Ci was also busy with political affairs, so he quickly forgot about this little wave. Many years later, the 8-year-old Princess Lian officially chose her study partners. Wei Ci saw that among the study partners was Qiguan Rang's youngest son. Wei Ci was speechless. He inexplicably felt that this situation was somewhat familiar. This Qiguan, she is only 5 years old. How can he be your study partner? The clean brush spun nimbly between Her Highness's fingers. She played with the brush with one hand and supported her cheek with the other. He's good-looking. Pleasing to the eye appearance was the most important thing. Although the 4 study partners were all good-looking, Qiguan Shi was indeed the most good-looking of them all. He had inherited the bloodline of his father, Qiguan Rang, from the northern borderline. He had a high nose and deep eyes. He was handsome and had a slightly feminine appearance. However, he was still young. He was fair and plump. His red lips and white teeth were very likable. Wei Ci forced himself not to think too much, but he couldn't help but feel nervous. Grand Tutor, you don't like him? Wei Ci shook his head. Wenjing has taught him well. This child has such manners at such a young age. How can I not like him? Princess Lian said, then I will choose him. Wei Ci was speechless. Chapter 1846. Qiguan Rang. Qiguan Rang. Wake up. The call was like a distant bell, knocking on Qiguan Rang's heart, slowly waking him up from his long dream. He opened his tired eyes and saw the dazzling light outside the window and the tall green canopy of the trees. The professor is looking for you. His desk mate kicked Qiguan Rang. The latter held his head with a headache, his slightly gloomy eyes showing a bit of defenseless vulnerability. You've been listless these days. Did you go out to have fun? Nothing, I've been dreaming for the past few days and can't sleep well. His desk mate secretly touched up her makeup with lipstick. Her red lips were full and moist. Coupled with her face, she looked even more mature and charming. Another dream? Qiguan Rang looked out the window with his chin in his hand and said faintly, yes, but the scenes in the dream are very fragmented. I always suspect that it's my past life. His desk mate rolled his eyes. You've seen too much. I think it's your imagination that's caused by your sleep disorder. Qiguan Rang didn't answer. He just looked at the scorching sun outside the window without blinking. At this time it was midsummer and the heat outside the window was surging. The air was almost distorted by the heat, but the room was still as cool as spring. Why is the professor looking for me? Qiguan Rang looked for a while and then remembered why his desk mate woke him up. His desk mate said, what else? It's probably because of the exemption quota for the Federation's top university. There are only 3 spots in the entire school and you've always been number 1. No matter what, there should be a spot for you. You're really amazing. You're preparing to make a great leap. Qiguan Rang didn't feel happy and just snorted coldly. There's no exemption. I can still get in based on my ability. He said it calmly without the slightest bit of deliberately showing off, but his desk mate knew that he wasn't showing off. If this was considered showing off, Qiguan Rang was probably on the road of showing off for the past 20 years. He had been number 1 in the Sea Planet's comprehensive exam for 20 consecutive years. He had received all kinds of big and small awards and was one of the best in the comprehensive exam. The Federation implemented 20 years of compulsory education, which was equivalent to elementary school, middle school, high school, and university in ancient times. 20 years of compulsory education were free. Students would get their graduation certificate and could find a good job if they had the ability. Of course, if someone wished to advance further and did not want to enter society at their current age, they could choose to participate in the federal exam at their own expense. Students who passed the comprehensive examination would be able to enter the Federation's most prestigious institutions of higher learning for further study. Higher education institutions had always been strict with those who entered and those who left. The elimination rate was more than 60%. Any student who successfully graduated from a higher education institution was an elite among the elites. His desk mate sighed. That's true, but it's still better to get a spot. Who can guarantee that nothing will go wrong on the day of the exam? Do not forget each other when you are rich and powerful. When you've made it big, I'll go to the central planet of the Federation and rely on you. I've never left Planet C in my life. I heard that the central planet is a flourishing planet with lush greenery all year round. It's not as barren as Planet C. Planet C was suitable for human habitation, but it was barren in resources. The outdoor temperature was above 40 degrees Celsius all year round. The planet's environment was not good, and its geographical location was not good either. It was a remote planet with a very backward economy and society. Although they could live a stable life here, the universe was so big. Who wouldn't want to go out and explore? Chiguan Rang grunted in agreement. His desk mate continued, if you really managed to stand out, that would be amazing. The solidification of the social class in the Federation was not too serious, but it was not easy to climb up from the bottom. Chiguan Rang said, don't read those useless news. The current Federation was not like the ancient Earth era. Other than higher education institutions, education resources were free for all citizens. Learning was not as good as the elite students. Rather than saying that resources were biased, it was better to say that one was too lazy and innately inferior. Boring. It's so tiring to talk to a gloomy guy like you. Chiguan Rang did not comment. He went to look for the professor. The professor's words made Chiguan Rang a little unhappy. The professor tried to persuade him to give up the recommended spot. The reason was that he was strong enough to stand out in the comprehensive exam. It was better to leave the precious spot for other students. This is also for the good of the school. Chiguan Rang said, but it's not friendly to me. He was confident that he could pass the comprehensive exam, but it did not mean that he deserved to lose the precious recommended spot. Just as his desk mate said, his current state was not stable. He often had headaches and nightmares. It was hard to guarantee that the comprehensive exam would not have any accidents. As for the professor's suggestion, I reject it. The professor's face was a little ugly. Student Chiguan, how can you face the alma mater that nurtured you like this? Chiguan Rang said, it was the Federation that nurtured me and the Federation that allocated the funds. The alma mater only played the role of a middleman. I also hope that the professor can understand that the recommended spot given by the Federation is not a tool for private gain. If it belongs to me, it is mine. After a few days of rejection, Chiguan Rang happened to hear that the third-ranked student had given up the recommended spot and was replaced by another unfamiliar student. That student's results are not outstanding. It's just that his art results are a little better. I can't believe he got the recommended spot. Chiguan Rang coldly read his book. Where there's sunshine, there's also haze. This kind of person is a disgrace to the name of teaching and learning. His desk mate could not help but stiffen. I say, desk mate, have you realized that the way you speak has been a little strange recently? Chiguan Rang frowned. Have I? His desk mate said, yes. For example, when you were sleeping and I woke you up, the look in your eyes and the tone you used when you first woke up was scary. It was still the same face and the same voice, but the aura was completely different. It had the pressure of a superior. Chiguan Rang frowned. I don't know why, but that dream has been happening more frequently recently. This dream did not just appear in the past 1 or 2 years. It had started when Chiguan Rang could still remember. It was just that he was a little over 6 years old at that time. The dream was vague and he could not remember it clearly. The only thing he remembered was the emptiness in his heart after waking up, and occasionally a strong sense of regret. He felt that he was looking for someone, but he did not know who that person was. While all the candidates in the Federation were busy with the comprehensive exam, Chiguan Rang, who had obtained the recommended spot with excellent results, was very calm. Not only did he have the time to sleep and read, but he even took the time to go back to the largest retirement city on Planet C to see his guardian. There were some things he wanted to talk to his guardian about. It was about his childhood memories. His guardian told him a shocking secret. In order to maintain the population, the Federation uses artificial methods to interfere with reproduction. You know this, right? Of course Chiguan Rang knew. Since more than 1,000 years ago, almost every citizen of the Federation came out from artificial incubators, not from the mother's womb. The guardian sighed. Natural reproduction will give birth to children with genetic defects. Artificial methods can screen embryos with genetic problems, but there is no guarantee that there will be no problems after birth. According to the Federation law, children who mature and leave the artificial incubator have their own human rights. No one can forcibly take them away. You are one of those with acquired mental retardation. Your body has detected that your spiritual body is weaker than a paramecium. Qiguanrang was speechless. Was he serious? The guardian also sighed. These children with problems are usually handed over to a specialized robot organization to take care of them until they die of natural causes. You are one of the unusual ones. When you were about 6 years old, you suddenly detected a strong spiritual fluctuation. You said your name was Qiguanrang. Qiguanrang choked out a sentence. But I don't have these memories, the guardian said. You were even sent to the research institute as a baby for a while. You don't have these memories either? This case was too special. The research institute did not have a biopsy, but it was inevitable to do a few more comprehensive examinations. If they could find the root cause, they might be able to solve the problem of those children with mental retardation raised by machines. The results of the research were fruitless. Qiguanrang was an independent Federation citizen, so the research institute under the Federation's breeding agency arranged for him to be an ordinary citizen. Coincidentally, the guardian was about to retire. He used his position for private gain to ask for Qiguanrang's custody and moved to his hometown, Planet C, to retire. He was very attentive to Qiguanrang's education. The latter's performance was more like a genius than a mentally retarded person with a defect in his mental genes. So many years had passed in a flash. Qiguanrang was now 26 years old. He wanted to participate in the comprehensive examination and go to a broader stage. Qiguanrang was definitely a 1 in a billion miracle. I'm preparing to go to the best university in the Federation. The guardian said, you have ambition. The school's recommendation only allowed Qiguanrang to enter the best university, but he did not know which university it was. He directly targeted the leader of the best university. He had ambition. However, the best university in the Federation is basically training military talents. Your conditions are not advantageous. The guardian did not dare to be so arrogant when he was young. At the same time, he was also a little worried. The Federation has been fighting against foreign countries in recent years. Your path is not easy. Qiguanrang said in a low voice, I don't know either, but I have to go there. The guardian was speechless. It was strange that Qiguanrang was not interested in other things, but he was very enthusiastic about military-related content. While they were talking, the Federation's military media pushed a piece of news. Qiguanrang asked, who is she? The guardian said, Jiang Pingji, the commander of the army. My goddess. If I can get the goddess's signature in this life, it will be worth it. Qiguanrang was speechless. He looked seriously at the determined red-haired woman on the virtual screen. She looked strangely familiar. Why haven't I seen her before? The guardian said, there's a war at the front lines. How can I have time to be on the news? The Federation had fewer large-scale wars in recent years, but there were still local wars. The 7th Army was the front line, so they could not be missed. Jiang Pingji, as the commander of the army, naturally could not stay in the back. The Federation's usual tactic was to report the good news and not the bad news. They comforted the citizens internally and took a tough stance against the outside world. The 7th Army was the front line, so it appeared on the news the least. But with the decrease of wars in the past 2 years, it slowly began to appear in the public's view. Qiguanrang read the news over and over again for a long time. That night, the scene in his dream became a little clearer. He felt that he had vaguely grasped something, but after waking up, he felt a little lost. That feeling lasted until the day he entered the first school. He came to the first school in the Federation from the remote sea planet. He did not know if it was a coincidence or fate, but the student sitting next to him was a new student with the same fiery red hair. Jiang Yan. Qiguanrang's heart trembled. Qiguanrang. The latter also frowned but did not say anything. The principal was giving a long and meaningless speech. When the students were drowsy, he suddenly dropped a bomb. Hearing the uproar and cheers around him, Qiguanrang could not help but widen his eyes and look carefully at the person on the giant screen. The intense throbbing in his chest indicated that this scene was unusual. In a trance, a familiar scene seemed to appear in front of him. It was the strict and solemn prison of the military camp. He was in a sorry state talking to a woman. In this big world, no one can call themselves a wise ruler except for me. Apart from me, who else can you be loyal to? If you are a wise ruler, I am willing to serve you even if I have to go to hell. I will serve you forever. But are you? Of course I am. The woman looked at him and he was almost burned by the flames in her eyes. He sneered. Words are no proof, the woman said. Indeed, words are no proof, but reality and the future will tell you the answer. Chiguan Rang did not know how he got out of the venue. A cold wind with the fragrance of flowers blew over, and he shivered violently. When he came back to his senses, he realized that he was out of the venue. In the distance, the red-haired new student of the same batch that he had met once was talking to the famous leader of the 7th Army. The two of them seemed to notice his gaze and could not help but turn around. The goddess, who was also his guardian, walked towards him. She walked without making a sound, but Chiguan Rang felt that something was about to rush out from the depths of his mind. 2 meters away from him. Wenzheng? Chiguan Rang felt something in front of him, and memories of the past surged out like a tide. Yes. Please remember the original domain name of this book. Jiuqian Shenhuang mobile version website. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.